generated is because of the way in which we elect the president.
Yeah.
So if we remove that element, actually the truth of the matter is that if it's infighting within the party as to who should be chosen, that'll be a different matter, but it won't be a nationwide problem or proportionately divided. For many politicians, the idea of just having one seat at the top will not be tenable. They will want there to be other positions so that other people can feel that they have been represented.
Shared power, really. It can't just be in the hands or on the seat of one only. People want to be, I think more and more the representation of power needs to be spread, and that's a view that has come from people more now than ever.
You see, we didn't ask the Swiss ambassador about this, but you see, they have a rotational presidency. It is known. There's no guessing. When it moves from here, it goes here. It's known. So it's not even a process that bothers them.
They don't have to think about it because it's already predetermined. Right.
And the reason why it's even clearer, the function of the president, crystal clear again. What they do, what they don't do, what they represent.
I think our problem, my view, is personality politics. This whole thing of let's create more positions is because the people who are pushing for that are garnering for those positions.
Yes.
When we're having the same conversation during the drafting and the writing and the passage of the current constitution, one of the things that we're talking about, devolution, is it's going to do that.
Right.
We will devolve power, decentralize power, take it down to the people, and you'll have 47 positions created that have executive authority. And then now you're saying those 47, those 48 are not enough. Let's create some more at the top. It's personalities, because some personalities don't feel like, they should lower themselves to become governors, and they still want to play at the national level.
Absolutely. Actually, devolution was supposed to take attention off the presidency to some extent because, as it were, and remember there was even contention as to whether they should be referred to as excellency, and that was because we were having 47 presidents, so to speak, who were in charge of counties. So the president of the nation was not going to be as powerful, or so we thought, based on the fact that now at the county level you have a leader who is a president or a leader of that particular area, and that has not worked. So my question and my challenge is,
for the rest of us it has worked. For a few people it hasn't.
No, in terms of removing the attention from
the opportunity.
In terms of removing attention from the president of the nation, he's still too powerful as far as we are concerned as Kenyans, I think, and that's why now creation of the other positions. Although it is questionable whether it is really Kenyans who actually in support of those positions, or it is the political class that makes us think that Mike, we are interested in those.
When you say he's too powerful, what do you mean? The presidency.
Resources. At the end of the day, power equals resources. So when the national government deals a blow on the local government by either freezing funds or delaying funds or whatever, that becomes the seat of power. And by that fact, they're able to control what the governors do, which song they sing.
So our problem is not the powerful presidency. No. Our problem is just a national government that's refusing to let go. And we should make it let go.
The national government is deciding that they are not going to obey the constitution.
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. Because what is supposed to be done is clear. We've had this discussion here with regards even to the judiciary. The judiciary is supposed to be independent. All these independent bodies, you'll find that their independence is impeded by finances. They can't function because they can't get the money. And the money has to come from the national government.
So question is, then what bedevils us? The fact that we have a national government that does not want to obey the law?
Yes.
What bedevils us is lack of goodwill in implementation of the constitution.
National ethos.
Impunity
at
is the root cause of all of
this.
All these other things that you mentioned are symptoms.
Positions does not solve that. So in short, we're going round in circles and we'll end up exactly where we were.
Yes.
Sometimes, why they give people what they call a placebo is to make you feel better, even though in reality you're actually not better. So this is a placebo. The idea that so long as there are more seats, we might be represented here. even if there were 10, you still won't be represented, so long as the impunity that we have in the country exists.
It's still
Continues.
existing.
Yes.
It's
Let's
a
take a
mirage.
break. Take a look at the weather. Shortly, we'll be back. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Morning Express. Good morning, 18 minutes after 6.
It's 17 degrees in Nairobi and mostly cloudy, expecting light showers through the city. Highs of 26 and lows of 17 today. Mostly cloudy in Nakuru, and rain will come in through the hours at highs of 28 and lows of 15. In Nyeri, it's mostly cloudy. Rain expected later as well, with highs of 25. We see partly cloudy conditions in Eldoret through the day, currently at 14 degrees. We'll see highs of 26. Taking a look into Kisumu at 21 degrees and partly cloudy, expecting rain with a high of 29. In Malindi at 28 degrees, 33 degrees the high, as showers expected with dark clouds through the afternoon. Slight rain showers in Mombasa this morning to continue through the day with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Looking into East Africa, 26 degrees, partly cloudy conditions. Thunderstorms to come in through the afternoon with highs of 32. In Kampala at 21 degrees right now. Rain expected as well with highs of 26 and lows of 19. Further down south in Johannesburg, clear skies at 15 degrees, highs of 26. In Lagos at 29 degrees. It'll be clear this morning, rain expected in the afternoon with highs of 34. And take a look into Paris at 13 degrees. It's cloudy conditions and showers expected later with highs of 16 and lows of 11. New York at 16 degrees, it's warming up with cloudy skies, highs of 18 and lows of 7. And finally in London at 10 degrees, it's cloudy conditions through the day with highs of 14 and lows of 5.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Right, and coming to you live on
94.4
Spice FM, and that's on KTN
Nairobi.
News Morning Express. It's the Situation Room, and of course we are looking at what's making headlines with Siti Muga, with Ndu, and Eric Latif. My name is Michael Gitonga, and looking at what's making headlines, we started off, of course, with the Standard, but quite a number of stories that are interesting, including the fact that I think Kenya is a very wonderful country. We seem to have a lot of money, a lot of resources, that, you know, you can keep a job for 2 years before you get fired. And that is what's happened to one MCA who lost her seat after it was declared vacant because of absenteeism for 2 years. Isn't that?
The question is, did she come to work a couple of days in the year, or did she just not show up at all?
Well, she has not showed up for 2 years with no reason, with no reason given to anybody, and she's just been mute.
According to the Speaker of the County Assembly, Beatrice Elachi, she neither wrote nor informed any other member of her reasons for being away.
Oh, nice.
Or just so that you know, this
Was
is a
she
Jubilee
aware that
nominee.
she had been nominated? Maybe that we should start from there.
Oh, come on. By the time you get nominated, there's notice of your nomination that has been given, and you accept it.
No.
You accept
I
it.
think
Yes, you
Latif
do.
is being rather...
What?
You accept the nomination. Did you not know that you got the job? They're going to nominate you and they don't tell you?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, out
Eric,
in the
no,
blue.
come
Come
on.
on, Eric. They nominate you. They give you notice of this nomination. You accept it
You're sworn
before they
in.
make it public. And then further to that, you're sworn in.
You personally take oath
You'd
of
really
office.
have to be living intergalactically not to understand that you needed to show up here on Earth for this job, for what you are nominated. I don't understand. Unless
what
there's
should we
something
do?
that really we're not.
She should be surcharged because, of course, she has been receiving.
And she's been receiving a salary. So where do you think this money was showing up in your account every month? What for? I mean, it's one of
But
those
also
ridiculous things that we need to get an explanation for.
The law is if you miss a certain number of sittings, when you get to 2 years, it also shows a breakdown in the management of the county assembly.
Which is what I was going to ask. By the time she didn't show up for a month, by the time she didn't show up for 1, 2, 3 sittings, was nobody asking any questions? And they just
Absolutely.
kept paying her, and without her contribution, was she not on a committee to be expending some kind of duty? Was she? I mean, those questions definitely should have been asked.
So
and should continue to be asked, because at the end of the day, I mean, who doesn't want a free salary for 2 years? So I would kind of remove her from the picture and ask those responsible to have, who was supposed to have done this long before. By the time she didn't show up, whatever number of times, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 times consecutively, they should have
6, I think.
Yeah, there should have been, a red flag raised, and this matter should have been dealt with way before. But there you go.
Habiba Hussein, nominated MCA, Nairobi City County Government.
MIA. Since we had the
Nominated
credentials to
MIA.
And I wonder where she actually is. I mean, will she suddenly reappear and say, hey, guys...
she was summoned to appear before the committee. She did not even respond to the summons.
Is she alive?
This is dun dun dun. There's
That's the
conspiracy.
thing.
Where
you
is
do not
she?
know anything about this person.
Wow.
Does she exist? Is
Well,
this just a picture of somebody we
I
think?
guess our investigative
it's-
teams will find out.
Yeah, the
one
story
time or
will
the other.
emerge out of this. You'll
Yeah.
see. You'll see stories.
The tragedy of filth choking Nairobi streets at City Hall runs on autopilot. Once green city in the sun capital, now a pale shadow of its former self. This is reported by The Nation. A leadership crisis has seen residents endure dirty and stinking alleys as services take a big hit. A lot is not happening. Garbage is not being collected in certain parts of the city. Space is being fought for. Streets that should be clean are mounds of garbage all over the place. What would be the cartels are not working as they were previously within the city to pick up trash, to provide water, because there's no leadership.
My question would be, when was Nairobi last the green city in the sun? I mean, I don't remember a time when we didn't have this filth. As much as, yes, maybe now, especially looking at this picture, it looks horrid. But I don't remember the
Was
last
a picture
time.
taken?
I would like to think this is a recent picture. But it would actually also work for last year, the year before, and possibly even 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I think this is services that have completely stalled to a halt right from the word go. I remember I interviewed Mike Mbuvi Sonko just after he came into the position of governor, and maybe 2-3 years after. And one of the this was before. Sorry, it's when he was senator. When he was senator, and he had this dossier of how cartels are being paid to collect rubbish and are not collecting, of course, under the former governor, that's Evans Kidero.
Yeah.
And they were getting paid some huge amounts of money, but never ever collected one piece of paper in form of garbage. But it looks like he's possibly just carried on the same tradition, yeah.
Not getting the job done. It is an eyesore. I mean, looking at a capital city, we shouldn't have this kind of thing. At the very least, it should have some semblance of order, orderliness, cleanliness. It actually does look really bad. If these pictures are anything to go by, something needs to be done. The house needs to be cleaned.
Something needs to be done.
This
But
is something
sometimes
it's trying to take us to accepting that the national government should come and start running the Nairobi city government. This, in my own conspiratorial thinking, is a way of trying just to shepherd us towards that direction. Look, you elected a governor. You have had 2 governors in Nairobi. Look at the state of affairs in Nairobi. Remember the tenure of Gakuo. Remember the tenure of the town clerks and the minister. Let's head back
Actually,
there.
Gakuo stood out. As far as town clerks go, he stood out. And one actually saw change in Nairobi. I mean, one saw change, literally. Street lights, clean streets.
Flower beds.
Yeah, one saw them. And that was it, really. Then we went back to factory settings.
Look, maybe you were given a yellow pill or two when you were down and under Eric, and then it would have been a conspiracy pill to swallow. But in this case, it looks nasty, regardless of whether it is shining on the spotlights of whether the national government should take over or not. It looks nasty. It needs to be sorted out.
It needs to be sorted out. It's not new.
You remember one of the cases that the governor had to do with procuring a company that would actually be responsible for this very same thing, remember? And there was a big hoo-ha about who was given, whether procedure was followed, etc., etc., etc. Garbage collections is big business, yes.
Yeah.
But it appears that it is big business for being paid for doing next to nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely. And question is, at what point are we going to have enough? Because unlike church, where God requires 10%, if you believe that, you do it voluntary. But with taxes, they take it whether you like it or you
not.
don't. And our taxes, Kenya is one of the most highly taxed countries in the world.
Who
Yet
is
with
the most
zero.
taxed country in the world?
I don't know, but
think it's us.
Kenya comes close to the top.
I think it's us.
Yeah.
Oh, we probably are the top, right? But we are taxed, but no services. We have garbage like this.
We do have services, actually, Mike. It's called lip service.
Right, okay, because if you look at highly taxed
From our elected
countries,
leaders.
if you look at highly taxed countries like the
Words.
Scandinavian countries, highly taxed, almost 50% of your income, however,
The services are there.
are there.
I mean, in this day and age, we're in
to something.
2020, and we still have taps that are running dry in the capital city, Nairobi. We have hotels that buy water from boreholes, water that is not even, verified whether it is fit for human
Not
consumption.
tested.
And by the way, that water is probably sipping from this
Okay.
garbage that we see.
Not
And we
probably,
wonder
it
why
is.
we get sick. Anyway, my point is, or my question to Kenyans is, when will we be fed up to a point where we say enough is enough? I cannot be taxed this amount of money and live with this kind
still
of
not
And
get
drink
the service.
dirty
and not
pool
get the
water.
services done. Something must shift.
Of course it must. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation at coming up to 6:30. Remember, you can tune in to our conversation on KTN News. This is KTN Morning Express. We are broadcasting there as well. Spice FM in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri and Malindi, as well as on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook. We're live streaming on YouTube. Spice FM KE is our channel, as well as Spice FM KE on Twitter and www.spicefm.co.ke. Taking a short break, we take a look at the traffic, and then we come back to take a look at the headlines. Good morning.
All right, smack dab in the middle of the week. Let's see what's going on. Wayaki Way jump started as far as the 87. Kabete is moving slowly, but not too bad right now. Survey to Muthaiga, very clear on Thika Road. Slow from Muthaiga towards the Pangani Tunnel. It'll take you there. Right now, we haven't seen it build up as much that would cause too many problems. On Mombasa Road, the normal, typical traffic that we see as far back as the Weybridge right now, snaking its way slowly then past the SGR. It'll take you some time getting off at Cabanas. Then you will see that traffic still continues all the way to General Motors, very slowly then towards the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. So it's what we expect right about now. I can't see anything major happening. Other roads, the eastern and southern bypasses open, northern bypass open off Thika Road, so you can use that as well. Nothing much happening on Langata Road. On Gong Road at the moment, now is the time to have gotten out. Some parts of the city slippery though because of the showers that we experienced this morning, so you want to take it easy. Anything out of the ordinary, you want to let us know. We'll let you know in a short while what other parts of the city look like, so you can plan your journeys in good time. Spice Event KE is how you can reach us or give us a call. It's Wednesday. Let's keep it moving.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Right, and it's the Situation Room together
94.4
with
Spice
KTN
FM,
Morning Express coming
Nairobi.
together both on radio and TV. And remember, excuse me, in case you're not in any of those mediums, you can also get us on World Wide Web, spicefm.co.ke, and get to catch up with what's happening. And the Situation Room is exactly where we are at, looking at some of the stories that are making headlines. Eric, have you ever had ambitions of being vice president
No.
of this country?
No.
Why not? I think you have a good brain, between the ears, and you articulate things pretty well.
So you need
Why
help.
would you not want to aspire for deputy president? City, you look at me like I'm cuckoos.
I wouldn't venture to stay to actually even offer an opinion on your state of mind, but I'm actually thinking, why are you limiting Eric to deputy? Why?
Yeah, I'm wondering. So
Yes, there's the presidency, there's governor. Eric would even be MCA. Why are you only limiting him to the deputy president?
Well, in this particular case, because there seems to be a curse that maybe he might be able to lift.
And what is this curse?
The curse, according to the Daily Nation, is the curse of Kenya's vice president. I think apart from Moi, we've not had any other vice president ascend to president, as in
Kibaki.
but not not from vice president to
not
president.
from vice to
Immediately.
president.
He had to, go around the block a few times, then come back
Vice
and
president.
give it a shot. But yeah, apparently it's a poisoned chalice. And looking at our current deputy president, it looks like there could be some credence to that story. The fact that
None whatsoever.
The seat is dogged.
why not?
None whatsoever. None. The
How
issue-
many presidents have we had?
Yes.
So far, we've had what, 3, 4?
This is the fourth.
Kenyatta,
Four
Moi,
presidents.
Yeah.
Right?
This is the fourth.
Kibaki.
Don't
Four
count the years.
presidents.
Count the actual
Count the
people
men.
who have actually been in that position.
Apart from Jomo Kenyatta, who did not have to rise from being a deputy to president, now the others are the ones who had the opportunity, all right? And two of them have been deputy president, vice president, and have become president.
Yes.
So what is the issue here? 2 out of 3 who could probably come from vice president to president have become president.
Become president.
What's the issue?
Maybe the issue is the number of vice presidents we've had, because there are many.
Yes, true.
We've had very, very many. If you count, there are 9. Well, in fact, let's count, shall
I
we?
think there are 12.
No, they're not 12. Jaramogi, Murumbi,
Murumbi, Moi,
Kibaki,
Josephat Karanja,
Karanja,
Saitoti,
Saitoti,
Mwai Kibaki,
Mwai Kibaki, Mudavadi,
Mudavadi, yes.
Kijana
Kalonzo
Wamalo.
Kijana
Musyoka.
Wamalo. Are we, what
Kalonzo
what number are we
Musyoka.
at now?
We're at
10.
10,
Yes,
11.
I'm telling you we're 12. All right, go on.
And then William Ruto, 12.
Mudi Awori.
13.
13.
Kwa hivyo.
Hivyo
Vile
basi.
tunasema.
Hivyo basi.
Ni kwamba.
I think here is one of those cases again where we were talking about these things last week. What is the story here? What's the source of the analytical story on the front page?
And
The
why-
source is William Ruto. I mean, let's just get to
What's the
click
story?
into
That there's
it.
a curse of deputy president because what? Has William Ruto not become president? If William Ruto had not risen to become president after an election, then we'd be saying, oh, look, even William
He
Ruto.
joins the statistics.
Yeah,
The
he
question
joins
that's
the
posed,
statistics. What's the
however, is
issue?
only a few deputy presidents have escaped humiliation. Is history repeating itself?
And what is this humiliation that they're
Deputy
speaking of?
President William Ruto says the system is out to stop him. Whether or not he'll break the jinx and become the first to succeed a living president remains to be seen. This is the story.
Oh, the story is about the humiliation while in office.
Right.
Supposed humiliation.
And if he will actually,
But what form does this humiliation take?
In whatever form. Jaramogi's, there was humiliation. There was
No,
isolation.
that was just a parting of ways.
Yeah.
Parting of ways. Remember, Jaramogi is the one who left. He left and formed a party.
Yes.
Yes.
And by the time he was leaving, was it amicable? It wasn't.
Yes, but that necessarily it doesn't.
was conflict. There
yes,
was
it's just conflict.
Conflict between
See,
the
the word
president
humiliation
and the
is
vice
what I have
president.
issues with, because if people have political differences, and somebody makes a decision based on the difference, where's the humiliation?
Even with Ruto, really, if we looked at it, even if they parted ways and had a difference of thought within Jubilee Party, it's not necessarily humiliation. I think it's just that they have decided to go separate ways.
Yes, if it's a question of separation, then it means you've differed maybe on a principle, and you figured the best thing to do is for me to step down. And this is what even yesterday's papers were talking about. They were saying, if you read, for instance, the article,
the column by
Macharia Gaido, this is what he was saying. I would argue that the Vice President Jaramogi Oginga Odinga differed with Kenyatta, and he stepped down. He said, okay,
enough is enough.
We don't need to continue because we clearly don't see eye to eye. I will move away. That's what is done. And the argument was the deputy president, the first deputy president actually we've had since this, because we've never had a deputy president before. He has decided he's staying put. And yet everything about him seems to suggest that he and his principal have differed completely.
Yeah, but there's also the isolation and humiliation. There is that. I mean, we can't run away
where
from
is
that
it?
fact.
I want someone to
Isolation
explain
may
it
be
to me.
humiliation.
We
not.
can't run away from
No,
that.
I want someone to explain to me where the isolation is and where the humiliation
No,
is,
isolation.
and how it manifests itself.
The isolation, I would say, is the fact that the deputy president will say one thing. I mean, let's just take BBI because that's what's top of mind. He'll say one thing, and the president will say something totally different, or
Vice versa.
gestualize or something different, or vice versa. You'll have
When
the
did-
president say that we'll do things this way. The deputy president will.
And
go
when
do
did
the
this
direct
begin?
Opposite.
Remember during the happier
handshake.
during happier days when everybody wore a red tie and a white shirt,
Yeah, they were dressing
It
alike.
started
And they were
9th of
basically
March
and
speaking
everybody
the same-
spoke after the other.
2018.
Yes.
In the
Precisely at
in the
4 o'clock,
initial
right?
years
Yes.
of bromance, you saw that. I mean, there was cordial relations. Now you don't see the cordial relations. Even looking at how, when is the last time you saw the deputy president presiding over some big function in government? In the first,
I actually don't know because
in the last
those
government, you
ones
used to
passed me
see
by.
it constantly. You're like, if you're watching the news and you're observing the news or sitting in the newsroom, you'd see this is a function by a state organization, a state agency. It was presided over by the deputy president. This deputy president was making pronouncements here. He delivered a speech here, a keynote address here and there. When's the last time you saw that? That tells you something. And when he says, I'm the deputy president, I know what I'm talking about, I think there's clearly something that he's saying, look, I have actually been pushed to a corner. He's
Yeah,
not
that's
the only
what
one.
he- but that's what he's saying.
We also saw in the other previous deputy presidents, we can say, for example, that in the years of George Saitoti, when he was being, wewe toka, wewe rudi, stay out in the cold, you don't know whether you're going to be reappointed or not. That's the kind of treatment that we're talking
Did
about.
Joyce Saitoti resign?
He didn't, and he didn't have to. The issue is not about resigning. The story here is talking about those kind of treatments.
I still don't see the humiliation.
Isolation.
I still don't see it again because has the deputy president been prevented from conducting his functions? Has he been hampered? Have we read anywhere that he's unable to ensure that the duties that are assigned to him or the duties that are within the purview of his office are not being conducted because government resources have been denied him?
Without the proclamation of such, to say, even by himself, where we've seen him speak out on other issues, without him saying, I've been locked out, I've not been able to, oversee state functions, for example, then it would be that he chooses to step aside or be away from the limelight by choice. That he sees that, certain people are in the heat of the party and he's on the outside, not because he was not invited to, but because he has
But
deliberately
he
taken
is the
a
deputy
stance.
president, as he correctly puts it, and he is in government. I want to understand the isolation. Where is it?
The
C'est la
fact
question.
that the bromance is no longer there,
No.
and they say 70% of communication is body language. So the body language tells us that there is definitely a drift.
All right. Let me perhaps throw something into the ring and consider this. This is what he says, along with other things that have been attributed to the deputy president. There is now what I would call a mantra, the why me. Every time there's something, it's like, why am I the one being targeted? Why are my people being targeted? Why this? Now, the why me has been so consistent in communication related to the deputy president that you'd actually believe that he's the one who says this all the time. And then you actually hear it on these clips, unless we're saying they're doctored. If you are in the media long enough and you're always making pronouncements, then two things are likely to happen. One, you'll get a lot of attention, but two, people will start disregarding the things you say because,
You're all over.
yes, even when what you're saying may really be very true, it'll be, He's at it again.
Okay, well, some reprieve for somebody else down south. Ramaphosa has been cleared of campaign fund irregularities. We know that he was taken to court. And this was, he won, backed by the opposition economic freedom fighters. He was not found, or rather absolved of any guilt. It was said, and the case was that it's a court ruling. That it was said that the case that was brought against him was 500,000 rand, or $31,500, was payment as found by public prosecutor. But then the ruling was that he did not intentionally mislead Parliament, because this is what the issue was, that he misled Parliament about what particular money was for. The full bench of the court found the public prosecutor did not have the jurisdiction to investigate Ramaphosa, and it reviewed and set aside the prosecutor's findings that the president misled Parliament about the donation he received from the controversial company as he squared off in that particular election. So his hands now essentially are clean.
Well, the Standard put it interestingly that he's been cleared of money laundering.
Take 3 steps up, yes.
Cleared of money laundering.
Yes, but what I find particularly interesting is that a serving president is actually in court. Their own court.
Yes.
And he's had to go through the process. And of even greater interest, the former immediate president of that particular country is still in court. Yes.
It's an interesting.
Yes.
That's something interesting.
It is something interesting and something that we should take note of, that presidents can be taken to court.
While sitting.
While sitting.
While sitting.
And interestingly, the same public prosecutor is said to be very good friends with Jacob Zuma, who, as you said, is in court over some of these same kinds of corruption allegations throughout his term in office. And she is the same one then who was now taking Ramaphosa's case.
Jacob Zuma's problem is a bit compounded because, one, it isn't something to do with an election. It has to do with high-handed business people who, unfortunately, in certain circles are considered a bit shifty.
Right, and they would give themselves the labels of economic freedom fighters, whereas they're fully fledged business. They're businessmen who've come together,
By the way,
giving it a different name, but it's all about the money.
Remember, economic freedom fighters is a name that's almost similar to a certain party within the South African political landscape.
Yep.
Yes, and it's headed by a firebrand whose name is
Julius Malema.
Thank you very much. Yes, so, and you can understand if you listen to the utterances that Malema makes, many of them have to do with the economic situation of South Africa.
Yes.
And the disparity that he feels actually exists.
And not receiving what they wanted to achieve.
And what they said. And he doesn't spare anyone. Ramaphosa wasn't spared. Jacob Zuma wasn't spared. And the white tribe in South Africa are also not spared.
Shoots from the hip. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Morning Express. Let's take a brief break and then come back at 6:45. Remember, you can tune in to this live stream on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke.
Spice FM, Malindi. Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music
together.
ever.
This is Situation Room and Morning Express. That's
Mature,
on Spice
intelligent
FM
talk
and
every morning.
Of course, the convergence,
Spice up yourself.
Situation Room is what it's called.
Mornings done right.
Now,
94.4 Spice
there are people
FM,
right now
Nairobi.
listening to traffic. What time is it? It's around just 6:45, so traffic must be bumper to bumper. Have you ever imagined that traffic canals actually sound poetic? And I'll read something here in the Daily Nation. It says, just as the sun rises in the east and sets on the west, traffic congestion in Nairobi is a fact that many residents have to contend with daily. Very poetic.
Nice.
I think, but very frustrating. But at the same time, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Apparently, a mobile phone game inspired by Nairobi's perennial traffic jam. So it has actually inspired a mobile,
What
app
do you
and
do in the game?
Play with it.
What's the game? What's the game?
Right, okay.
Well, it's one that
Maneuver through traffic?
you play that you're maneuvering around traffic and stuff. The only thing
And roads that you know. So
And-
it's basically
yes, and roads
moving
that
it
you
from
know.
Gong Road to Thika Road.
Correct. And
Try the shortest route.
but the only thing is, I'm just hoping that this game is not designed to play while you're in traffic, because that's against the law. To be
This
using your
would be
mobile
another
phone.
To play while in traffic is against the law.
To
be on
use
your
your mobile
phone
phone. To
while
be on
in
your phone
traffic.
while driving is
on
traffic
your phone,
On your
as
phone
in
while
listening
driving.
to it or talking or what exactly?
Using it
Using
actively.
your phone.
And what if
While driving.
what if you have a hands-free?
Yes.
That's
You can't
different.
play a game
You
with
can't play a game
hands-free.
with hands-free.
Of course you can.
No, you can't.
The game requires that you engage your fingers.
And
If
your
they
eyes.
should come up with another
if,
one.
Right.
if you happen to have a phone that has limitations, then your phone has limitations. So let's discuss this phone of yours which has limitations.
Oh my goodness! All right,
It's the
before
game.
we get into
Was
that,
this going to be about
yeah,
Nduru's
no,
phone?
yeah, it's going to be.
Oh,
that.
by the way, just for the records, she has two, so I don't know which one you mean.
Then they both have limitations.
Okay. Ndu.
CT just say you don't like phone app games.
Let's take a look at international headlines.
Morocco announces its first coronavirus death. Morocco's health ministry said that the country had recorded its first death to the new virus, an 89-year-old woman who had suffered from health problems. She is a Moroccan citizen, however, who had been living in Italy, and she suffered from this and unfortunately passed away. So that has been what we see. Of course, now looking through dailies or international, according to USA Today, the virus and oil fears shatter markets, and that is what is on the front lines. 6 states vote amid virus concerns. The infected cases in the US now up to 1,000, and they've crossed the 1,000 mark. The Daily Mail coming out of the UK, health minister struck by virus. Nadine Dorries attended the reception at number 10 Downing Street with Boris Johnson a day before falling ill. So she's been confirmed as having this. This is the UK health minister, just in case there's any kind of confusion there.
Junior minister.
All right.
Junior minister.
Junior
yes.
minister. If you go to the Guardian, coronavirus budget to shore up NHS and head off financial crisis. So around the world, wherever we want to choose the coronavirus seems to be taking the spotlight, and that is it. From the US, the Western Hemisphere, to the UK, we've seen that more countries have shut off. We've seen international matches then stopped. The Premier League will decide to either halt their matches or have no fan matches taking place. And we saw that Serie A already shut this down. They're not having any of these matches being played at all. So we have suspensions around the world. Again, looking at the fact that the US has now crossed the 1,000 mark in terms of infected cases. And this is what is making headlines, even,
This
across
one on the
international
Guardian is
news.
quite interesting. Hearing what the Chancellor of the Exchequer, that's the Finance Minister of the UK, is saying. He's preparing the next budget, and he has had to rework his budget so that he can finance operations to combat coronavirus. So he's got to put more money into the NHS. The UK is facing the biggest financial threat in more than a decade amid fears that the epidemic could cause a recession. Rishi Sunak was expected to announce a series of measures to safeguard jobs, extend the scope of sick pay, and prevent businesses going to the wall by deferring tax payments. So it's not just talking about, we're going to have 120 bed capacity. It's also looking at the other impact. If you shut down operations, if you say people don't go to work, there's going to be an impact, a ripple effect. What are you going to do to
And
cushion
taking all of that
the
into
economy?
consideration, then this now fuels your plan of action. You see, there's some kind of thinking that goes towards this, as
Italy
opposed
has
to just
gone even
making
a step
pronouncements.
further. They have gone into even looking at not just social services, but how you can reimburse people who are not working to ensure that the state is actually responsible for them having money in their pockets to do what they're supposed to do. But remember also, what's beginning to suffer is sports, because sports actually not only as entertainment but as a business. Now people are now being slowly but certainly consigned to observing and participating in sports in their homes.
Yep.
no large gatherings.
Correct.
Yes.
It has an impact.
It has an impact. And one, of course, worries that if it takes too long, whether it'll be possible to reverse it. I mean, there are those who possibly would be diehards. They would still go watch sports, for example, regardless. But at some point, people will get so comfortable watching it at home, and that just might be the new normal.
It will, but people get tired of staying at home. That's the other thing.
They're going to get cabin fever, and at
Yes.
some point, people want to be out, regardless of the danger that is posed when you open the door.
But remember, we also need to consider that the death toll in China from 40 fallen to 19, this ought to be noticed. And we also need to consider also that a lot of the new cases of the virus that are being talked about cannot be traced to either Italy, Iran, or China. So
It must be somewhere.
it's brought in a new debate.
Right.
Now, the truth of the matter is that with every passing day, the one thing that seems certain and the one thing that seems to be catastrophically affected by the coronavirus is the world economy.
The world
Yep.
economy is suffering from this.
It's going to take a big hit.
And before we move, from that, I don't know locally whether we are still, bracing ourselves for what might come. I just have a text here that I'd like to read, and somebody, a friend
Yes.
of mine, who I was supposed to be having a game with. I do play squash, believe it or not. But he says, "Hi, Mike. Apologies. I picked up a virus in Ghana. I don't know if we have any cases in Ghana." But he continues and he says, "And got back yesterday. That was yesterday. Quarantined. At least they have allowed me to self-isolate while I recover. But no checks have been done." So that leaves me wondering.
Well, that answers your question then in terms of what
But
is
the
being
other,
done
the
on
other
this
question
side.
that needs to be asked, remember when they say there are new cases of the virus, or there are places where they're actually testing people. You're tested
Yeah,
so that you get to know, instead of waiting for someone to exhibit the signs.
there's proactive testing.
Kenya, testing.
It's not happening. Interestingly enough, we saw President Ping visit Wuhan yesterday, giving all indications that infections are on the decrease in China. The first time we've seen a visit like that into the epicenter, and what came out was that things are getting better, as it were,
He actually
getting
said-
better
he's
in China
quoted
and
as
getting
having said so.
and said so, getting better in China and
worse
getting worse in different
all
parts of
over.
the world.
So China is recovering, and now the rest of the world
This is when the
taking a
world
hit.
is feeling it.
China will be, like I said, China will still remain ahead of the curve. By the time the rest of us are, opening up our businesses again, going back to work and all, China will have moved on. I come back to in the case of Kenya. So the government, we keep bashing the government. You go to work on a daily basis. Has your organization told you anything about coronavirus and the preparedness? For example, the HR departments, the health and safety departments, called in staff and said,
Zero.
this is what is happening. And this is what we need to do. And this is
Zero.
what we have protocols in place.
Actually, to an extent of where they should be saying that should you, have any fever or anything like that, right now it's red alert.
Yep.
You should flag that down. And
Stay at
even if it
home.
means you stay at home,
This
you
is
stay
the
at home.
thing.
Go
I
get
think
tested.
we're
Go-
afraid of this whole mentality of if you do feel sick, stay home. There's nothing like coming to pretend that you're the best worker on the planet. You're not feeling well, stay at home, because you actually risk infecting other people with whatever you may have.
But also protocols in place for preparation. So in case, what if in the event that the government says, all right, so from this point on, we are restricting movement, no large gatherings and such kind of things, and looking at an organization that maybe employs 50 people who are crammed up in a small place, this has to impact them as well. If you're not going to use public transport, how are people going to go to work? So are organizations preparing themselves for such eventualities?
Even office
and
setups.
communicating that.
Yeah, we have, open plan offices where you have 50, 60 people literally who gather and sit opposite each other.
cesspool.
That would have a
Right.
Cesspool
I-
for
I-
infection.
I
And
take
if
it
one
that
person had,
You're referring to something theoretical, of course.
well,
No.
Carry
do
on,
you want me to look outside the window right now?
here.
Outside this window of the studio, I can see. Let me see.
The
One,
issue
two,
of
three, four.
disinfection,
I can
the
already
issue
see
of looking
15
at
people
people who are
gathered.
here. If organizations are not starting to think, all right, so what essential services do we need? What is it that we need to do to make sure that even if we disrupt our operations, our business is not disrupted in a major way?
Eric, remember we had this discussion with regards to the government footing on these issues,
Yeah.
and whether the president should make certain pronouncements. Such a situation, you give directives. you say this is what as a country you're going to do in the workplace.
You don't
Yes.
give people
No,
time
no,
to
no,
meddle
no,
with
no,
an
no. This
option
is-
or the other. This is it.
Don't self-treat. Don't you're told this is what you're going to do. And we will send people around to find out if you have done it.
comply.
Now, that's how you ensure that you keep this thing in wraps. China didn't wait for officials to decide, think, pussyfoot,
Businesses,
have a
schools,
committee
you can
meeting,
have
have branch over it. No.
Edict comes from the top.
Done.
Down.
Needs to be dictated.
Yes.
All right. I know we're getting close to the top, but we have to talk about then yet another dictatorship taking place. And constitutional reforms very close in Russia to making sure that Putin stays in power literally to the end of his life, or at least until 2036. The man is making sure that he is not going anywhere.
But he will not
so
be
it's not just
president.
in Africa. Not just in Africa.
But that's,
that
that's,
he will remain
that's what
in
we
power.
discussed the other day.
I'm just telling you now. What's the problem?
See,
I'm
if
telling you
he's
that
not
this
going
is
to be
what he's
president
doing.
again. It's just no. This is the Western media again. This kind of propaganda you talk about. We discussed this thing, and in fact, you raised it the other day.
I'm
So
just
we'll
telling
discuss
you
it
what
anyway.
constitutional reforms are being brought about
Yeah,
in
but
Russia
staying in
to
power
make sure
means
that he
what?
stays
Is he
in power.
extending his as president? No.
So what's the problem?
Context.
Okay, all right. In Australia, there is a certain, a person by the name of Cardinal Joe Pell. At the height of his career, number 3, from Pope 123 him. He was sentenced to 6 years in jail for molesting 13-year-old boys. He's appealing his case, but as we speak, he's still a guest of the Australian penal system. I thought you should note that.
And the appeal is today. Is going to be heard today, or is
Yes.
the ruling going to be delivered today?
Well, the appeal is going to be heard.
All
He's
right.
appealing the 6-year sentence. Yes.
So
the
thank you very
things that
much,
go on.
Michael, for joining us again.
Thank
this
you very
morning.
much. Always a pleasure. Thank you for having us here and also on KTN News.
Asante
Certainly do
sana.
this again tomorrow.
We'll
Thanks,
see you
Mike.
again tomorrow. You'll be, of course, joining Trix Ngado downstairs in the KTN studios shortly to continue the KTN Morning Express.
Absolutely.
And you'll leave us here continuing the Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Of course, we'll have a new conversation coming up between now and 8, and then we'll be joined by Bishop David Oginde to talk about the separation between church and state in Kenya from 8 to 9. CT, as Mike leaves, remind him today's proverb.
A person who eats alone, Mike, cannot discuss the taste of food with others.
So I shall go and have my food now,
Yes,
and I shall discuss alone
indeed.
based on that proverb.
Tell us how it tastes.
That's what you call talking to yourself.
Goodbye, Mike. Have a good one.
Thank
Good
you.
morning. It's 7 o'clock.
All right. It's normal on Thika Road. The thing is that it's moving slowly, but it's not too bad this morning. Getting to the city centre should be all right. Serious traffic at Dagoretti Corner, though, on Ngong Road. 3 lanes to town against 1 lane coming inbound. There we're going to have a problem. Kiambu Road is good so far. Not problems. We've not seen any kind of overlapping as we speak, but you probably want to brace for that in the next hour or so. Jogo Road from Hamza stage to the Likoni roundabout. Overlappers all over the place, and police are trying to get some kind of semblance of order there. Let's see how that happens. So you want to know that the place is already bumper to bumper. All right, Ngong Road, like we said, good luck there because it is already chocker blocked. Mombasa Road from Syokimau to Cabanas, this is where we have a problem. That is the bottleneck on Mombasa Road today. We'll see what it looks like in a bit. 5 ferries are up in Mombasa, and we're told about that by the Kenya Ferry Services to ease congestion in and off the island. All right, we'll take your calls. Let us know what you see. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us see what you see, and we'll spread the word to make it a little bit easier for everybody this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start
This
your
is
day.
also Kenya's biggest conversation, and thank you very much for tuning in to Spice FM on 94.4 in Nairobi. We are in Mombasa, 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, Eldoret, 96.7, Nyeri, 90.9, 97.7 in Malindi, www.spicefm.co.ke, worldwide, as well as Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We live stream the show this and every morning. This is first and only 24-hour audiovisual radio station in this region. None other like us. All right? And I've got to brag. You know, when you get a moment, you toot your horn. So they say. So let's talk about foreign exchange earners and our forex reserves, okay? So first of all, if I ask you this morning, City, what's our biggest foreign exchange earner for the country?
I would say the remittances.
From the diaspora.
Yes, it's from the diaspora. I would say remittances because if it was horticulture, floriculture at some point, it was tourism at some point, but the truth of the matter is that they fluctuate. Remittances increase. Kenyans who live abroad, for some reason, seem to have this love for their country, so they're always sending money back.
Yep.
So it's a massive foreign exchange earner. In fact, the only two other countries that perhaps are better than us on this particular continent, Egypt and perhaps Sudan. Yes.
And indeed, you're right. Our biggest foreign exchange earner in the last 5 years has been remittances by Kenyans in the diaspora. And I'll give you the figures shortly. Let's just look at 2018. 2018, the kind of remittances that we were receiving. Top 5. At number 5 was coffee, giving us 12.8 billion shillings. At number 4 was horticulture, 127 billion. Tea, 140 billion shillings. We earned 140 billion shillings from tea. Then tourism, 157 billion in 2018. The diaspora remittances, 280 billion. Remember, the number 1 is 280, number 2 is 157. More than 100 billion more from the diaspora, more than the second highest foreign exchange earner, that is tourism. In 2019, last year, fifth, 10.2 billion shillings we earned from coffee exports. Then we earned 117 billion shillings from the tea exports. We earned from horticulture 153.6 billion shillings. From tourism, 163 billion shillings. And from the diaspora, 285.5 billion shillings. Now, these are figures from the Central Bank of Kenya on how we earned our foreign exchange last year and the year before. And even the data goes back many years. If you look at 2018 and 2019, the growth in the amount of money that the diaspora sent back home was 13.6 billion shillings more between 2018 and 2019. So the diaspora is basically Kenya's number 1 foreign exchange earner. We have given a lot of effort to the other sectors. We've given a lot of effort to horticulture. We've given a lot of effort. In fact, we even have a Kenya Tourism Board so that tourism is elevated. And remember, tourism was not doing as well. It was coming in after tea and coffee. After some time, tourism has risen. It's now the second for a number of years. Now we also are looking at coffee dwindling. Coffee exports not doing so well. Tea exports not doing so well. You have issues with the tea board and the KTDA. Now, if we look at diaspora remittances being number 1, then you want to ask yourself: is the government looking at this as important as it is, as placing diaspora remittances at the level of importance that they should? And I'm saying no. Purely put, I'd like to see the government set up a State Department for diaspora relations. This will come up with programs on engaging with the diaspora, Kenyans abroad, come up with programs on ensuring that we can also still sell our biggest resource, which is human resource, across the world so that we can get more remittances, ensuring that we have encouraging, incentives for the diaspora to continue remitting money back. It's helping our economy, it's helping the people back home. But I think the government has not done that much. And that's my point this morning.
really looking at the numbers that have come through, and this is something that it's obviously collated. Somebody's collecting this data, collecting this information through whatever channels people are sending this money through. It's available. The information is available. They would be able to do something for the people who are actually on the other side of the pond, as it were. I don't think it's a priority in this sense. You see money coming in, and you realize that okay, here's an exchange earner, but in terms of how they could be protected. And when we say protected and not kept safe, but their rights or thoughts, a business interest, for example, protected, and then you have an avenue through which more can be done, because you have people, a number of people in diaspora who would like, for example, to invest in Kenya, or maybe have ideas for inter-country trade, international trade, and things like that. But it's not really taken into consideration. It's people who left looking for greener pastures, then without realizing that they're going to send a bulk of their earnings back into the country, which, whether you want to look at it or not, actually does boost the economic profile of Kenya. I mean, look at the numbers we're talking about. Was it
85 billion.
285 billion shillings per
in just
per
2019.
year, in just 2019.
Yep.
That's a lot of money. And in terms of what then it could do, we understand that the money goes to individuals. However, it is circulating, because it's not just money that people are holding on to, obviously.
It's coming into
they're
the Kenyan
spending
economy.
it, they're using it, they're buying it. A lot of people are sending money home for personal investments, for example, buy a piece of land, buy a home, continue to construct something here or there. So it does seem that it is something that needs some kind of structure. You want to look at a number like that without structure.
What sort of structure do you have in mind?
Well, I mean, if you're saying that businesses are taking root in Kenya, or that people's real estate is being bought, people are buying houses or things like that, you know that this money is coming from this source. And a lot of that then is tailored to say that we see that it comes through, not necessarily that you do something with it, but that you understand where it's from, you understand what it can do, the potential that it has then to build the nation, as opposed to just some lifeless, thing there that brings in so much money.
It isn't lifeless, no.
That's what I'm saying. It isn't lifeless. And so that's why it needs to be considered as not such. As something that brings in so much money, it actually is a major contributor.
But consider, if you try and structure it, you may actually ruin it. I mean, logic lends itself to feeling that it actually could do better if it was structured. But if we look at the incompetent way in which the government handles things, remember, remittances, it's self-motivation. Someone decides they want to send money because there's something they want to do with it.
Yeah.
Whether they want to
support family,
whatever
they want
it is,
to invest back home.
Yes, but it's a decision they make, and then they follow through with
Yes.
it. Now, it's perpetuated simply because it is self-driven. Now, the moment you bring in government, in theory, it would help, because it could help steer it in ways which could benefit the senders of the money, and the economy could also benefit beyond what we are seeing. The unfortunate thing is that if the government gets involved in such a scheme, the likelihood of it succeeding becomes less.
How so? You see,
The
the kind of
government has been
structure we're
trying to
talking
set
about
up
is not
its-
saying that all this money shall come through. It
already comes through the government.
Through the government.
Yes, it
right?
does.
And also, you're not saying that the only way that your money shall be accessible to your relatives or to whatever project you're running back home is once you have already declared your source of income. Remember that the government was trying to do all those things, declare your source
They
of
were.
income,
They
locally
were.
and abroad. But now listen to the diaspora themselves and say, how can we make it easier for you to invest back home? How can we make it easier? For example, working with the financial institutions in the country, we have seen very many roadshows by commercial banks. You see commercial banks saying we're opening up diaspora accounts so that you can access and, coming up with partnerships between local banks and banks abroad, saying, so one bank here comes up with a partnership with a bank in the UK and says, Kenyans in the UK, you can deposit through this bank and the money will still come back home. If you work with the financial institutions and ask them, how can we make it easier for you so that Kenyans abroad can deposit money and send money back home? How can we make it easier, for example, by saying, so there is M-Pesa, what other platforms can we use, can we help you structure so that Kenyans can access that?
Eric, I actually
Cheaper.
like your discussion, and it actually lends itself to something that we should explore further. My contention is simply this. If the government is involved in this thing, at the point of planning, you'll have the most wonderful scheme and you'll say, this one will certainly, then comes the implementation of it, then comes the problems that we've become accustomed to. I'm not pouring cold water on this because it isn't a good idea. I am pouring cold water on the government involvement and how that would make it a success. Now, if we can go around it and find a way in which the government involvement will not again burden us with the same issues that we tend to have when the government gets involved in something, then I'd say, good. It would be a good plan because it's already, remember, it's already working. Money is already coming in. And this one has nothing, the government was not involved in the process at all.
Yes.
The only way the government is involved is because central bank has to know whatever money comes into the country.
Yep.
That's it. Beyond that, the answer is no. It is not as though I do not think there is anything positive the government has done. I do. But if I look at the queue of promises that have been broken, if I look at the queue of poverty-ridden Kenyans who seem not to know what they're going to do next or where the next meal is going to come from. And these are the people who rely on the government to ensure that they stay alive and that their livelihood is looked after. Then I have to say, if you've been sending your money through whatever sources, even if your relatives don't do what you agreed they're going to do, why don't you just pause and wait and see? If a government sets up a scheme that is working and has worked for Kenyans within Kenya first, when you've seen it working, then direct your money in it. But do not begin by saying, well,
you think the government will be meddling into something that's working and spoil it?
Oh yes, it's a talent they have. They have shown that they have.
I know where you're coming from in terms of not trusting the government, and when the government gets involved, things go haywire,
goes
right?
quite
I know
wrong,
where you're
yes.
coming from,
Yes.
but also look at it from the other side.
Yes.
If the government just sat back and said, all right, so what do we need to do? How do we need to facilitate, for example, the private sector? How do we need to facilitate the Kenyan diaspora? Because Kenyans have diaspora associations. Kenyans in the UK, Kenyans in the US, Kenyans in East Africa, Kenyans in the Middle East, Kenyans in China and East Asia. They have these associations. How can we ensure that those Kenyans in those associations are able, A, to even talk with the embassies and have conversations and give feedback on this is what we'd like? And just saying, come and tell us what you want, that's what we're going to do. Only if you tell us what you want. Start from there. Tell us what you want, this is what we will do.
Yeah, without
saying that let the government come up with the ideas. If you want to address the fear, let's even start from that basic point. You tell us what you want, okay, we'll do it.
And it could get to the point, I mean, okay, maybe living in some quasi-reality, but you could get to the point whereby it's not a matter of then wanting to have a handle on the money that comes in, but really being able to facilitate, make it easier, and then also invite more contributors to the pool to say that here is a forum that has been set up where it makes it easier then for you, for example, as you're remitting this money, if you're interested in investing, for example, we've set up a department whereby it's easy then for you to say, here, there are different investments that are available in the country. These are the sectors within which you could go into. If your interest is to make sure that if you want to put your money in bonds, for example, in the country, here we've set this up so that it can be facilitated for you. And I think the fear often then comes in where you say, well, okay, when it's my money involved and then the government wants to get involved, how am I sure that I'm going to be able to put my money in and get it out? I think it presents
Bonds
a
are secure.
unique
For example, if you
opportunity.
if you came up with a product, diaspora bond, sell it to the diaspora. Let
to
the
do
diaspora
something
come
for
in.
citizens without necessarily meddling in it and messing it up towards the protection of citizens. I mean, I think it presents a unique opportunity for this to be done.
Where you're 100% right, Eric, is if the government set up something which showed up the confidence that people have in the government, the remittances could actually increase. Because one would feel, and if it was explained, because the truth of the matter is, why do you think it is that in this country we have more investors queuing to come and invest in Kenya despite everything else that you're hearing? It's because, one, the returns have, the probability of guarantee is high and the profit margins are excellent. It's a combination of a business setup that is actually unique. Now, again, if the government were to sell these ideas and explain that, look, the opportunities that are available in Kenya at the moment, as you say correctly, through those bodies that they have,
For Kenyans.
Yes. Start
For
there and say,
Kenyans.
look, these are things that other people are getting involved in. this part of the world that you're in, these organizations in this part are in Kenya, doing A, B, C, D. Yeah, yes.
Plug in.
Precisely. Because then it would show up the confidence and they'd say, wait, if people who are in this country that I'm living in are able to do business in my country, why can't I?
Yes. And then you also
18 minutes to past 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at weather and then we come back and continue the conversation. Good morning.
87.9.
Showers across Nairobi in most parts and mostly cloudy conditions through the day at 18 degrees. Taking a look into Nakuru at 16 degrees. Showers expected later with highs of 28. In Nyeri this morning, it's mostly cloudy. It's going to turn into rain with highs of 25. In Eldoret, it's partly cloudy at 14 degrees, highs of 26. It's partly cloudy in Kisumu. Rain expected later with highs of 29 and lows of 20. In Malindi at 27 degrees. Rain will come through with highs of 32 and lows of 27. It's raining light showers through Mombasa and then mostly cloudy conditions which will result in thunderstorms later with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Taking a look into Dar es Salaam, currently at 26 degrees, thunderstorms expected later with highs of 32. And in Kampala, mostly cloudy this morning, rain showers following later with highs of 26 and lows of 19. In Johannesburg at 15 degrees, mostly sunny conditions through the day with highs of 26 and lows of 16. And finally in Lagos, it's partly cloudy this morning at 28 degrees, showers in the afternoon with highs of 34 and lows of 27.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Have been Kenyans, not produce, not floriculture, not tea, not horticulture, not tourism.
Human resource.
Our human resource. Kenyans in other countries outside of Kenya. In 2015, they sent 167 billion shillings back home. In 2016, 187.2 billion shillings. In 2017, it grew to 198 billion shillings. 2018, 280 billion shillings. And last year, Kenyans in the diaspora sent home 285.5 billion Kenya shillings. Easily, Kenya's biggest foreign exchange earner is Kenyans in the diaspora. And this morning we are saying, what is the government doing to encourage, to look at this as a source of foreign exchange earner and recognize that and say, we need to engage with this sector of our economy. We need to engage with these people. We need to engage and make sure that, well, first we can protect this sector. And secondly, we can see how to grow this sector. Now, because these are human resources, because whenever you look at tea, how can we protect and grow the tea sector, its tea product and the people involved? These are purely human resources. What is it that we need to do as a government to ensure that Kenyans in the diaspora can remit even more and feel more comfortable and safer sending money back home?
I'm looking at a survey that was done along these lines a couple of years ago, and it looked at remittances around the African continent. And one of the things and one of the questions that came up is like, look, I work, I'm here because I'm working, obviously having looked for greener pastures. But then what do I do with this money? I want to invest back home because eventually that is where I will go. What then do I do? What are the viable options for investment apart from sending money that would take care of my family, for example? I then have this extra cash. What then do I do with it? And I think the answers were not then given in this report. It was just given the information that these are the questions that people are asking. And then whether it is that you want to look at Kenya, whether you want to look at South Africa, Namibia, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Tanzania, Uganda, this was the question. And if you just look around, then there's so much that could be done. When you look at the growth of the private sector, when you look at the growth of other sectors whereby, capital investment is needed, but then also people could benefit then in terms of economic returns, There are very many things, but this information is sparse, being given out in little pockets. So you can imagine if there was one place where people then would be able to go, number one, find out this information, there would be people on site who would be able to say, okay, well, this is what you can do. Of course, with the mandate of the government to say, let us centralize this thing. Questions can be answered, advice can be given, some kind of,
one-stop
packaging,
shop, right?
so that you can go to this one place and all right, I have this extra money. These are the sectors within the country that I can
my
invest
investment
in,
would be
right?
secure.
Even if I want to build a house,
Yeah.
for example, or I want to buy a piece of land here, and this is interesting because you could link the two. Because then if you had experts on hand, just off the conversation that we had yesterday about TVETs, where that somebody could help in terms of building a home, you wouldn't have to worry about that. How many cases have we had of people in the diaspora who sent money home and either there was no house completely, or things were
Or no
bungled,
land at all.
or no land at all, or a house was built and things were bungled, the finishing was ridiculous
Yeah.
because they're not on site to actually make sure that things are being done in a proper way.
Part of that, the numbers of the tourists who come to this country.
Yes.
So they contribute in more ways than one. In fact, it would be interesting to determine what percentage of the tourists we get in this country were actually our people from the diaspora.
Well, our own Kenyans.
Yes, exactly. It would mean that the contribution of the diaspora would actually shoot up. We may actually find ourselves heading towards the 300 billion or so. Yes. In that regard, I think the idea is one that should be pursued.
But I like what you were saying, and this is talking about we should look at government from the other angle as well, and say if government starts interfering with this thing, they could spoil it.
Yes.
If government comes in, because the first thing that the government wants to do is put in a lot of stumbling blocks. Also now, Kenyans are coming, so you need to go and log on to this portal and register yourself and tell us where you are, tell us your source of income so that you are not encouraging money laundering. So we bring in the anti-money laundering law. If you want to invest in this infrastructure bond for the diaspora, this is
government for you.
This is government for you. And it's a very valid point that you're raising. If we don't tell them from the onset, you are not coming here so that you can make more money for yourselves. You are coming
The
here
money is being brought in already.
so that money comes into the Kenyan economy, so that first of all we get more foreign exchange reserves, foreign reserves coming in. The central bank is using a lot of this money as for execution. So it's helping our economy in more ways than one. So the government mandarins need to understand, we are not telling you to come up with new policies and laws and regulations that stifle this, that kill this, but you're coming up with stuff that is going to encourage this to grow.
I mean, ask yourself.
It has got to be diaspora telling you,
yes,
and then
what
you
they would like.
hearing, and then coming up with a product that responds to them.
Ask yourself, for instance, apart from trying to sell our country touristically, how often do you hear of a situation where the Kenyan government, for instance, with the exception, of course, of insurance, where they give you a rebate, how often do you hear of tax incentives that the government gives? For instance, just for instance, how often do you hear of tax incentives to industrialists?
Well, there are some. Remember, we had that conversation. Who was it who was telling us?
Yes.
That there are some companies that enjoy some tax incentives,
They
and these
do.
are very shrouded in a lot of secrecy.
That's what I'm saying. It ought to be out in the open. For instance, we also know that we actually produce more power than we can actually utilize. Have you seen the price of power going down?
Nope.
Yes. Now, one of the ways in which you industrialize is by having cheap power. This one is not complicated. The moment power is cheap, then it means your cost of production is low. If your cost of production is low, it means the goods will be easily and well priced.
Yep.
But now, this is something that only the government can do. What we can do on our part is talk about it. But this is something the government can do. The government has done excellently in ensuring that our power production has increased with time.
Yep.
And it keeps increasing. And they've even broadened the scope so that we are now heavily into solar, thermal, and we are leading in thermal on the continent.
Yep.
This is excellent stuff.
They've also done well in connectivity.
I think
Excellent stuff.
I think what we can look at actually is a structured approach on how to deal or encourage investments into the local economy. And I think that is what can be looked at. A structured approach. Can we do this? Are there things that can actually be done? I know we're going to go to a break, but we can talk about, examples that we've seen around the continent of what countries have actually done to encourage your money to come in so that you have working between private and public sector when it comes to the injection of funds and how it has worked.
We'll take a look at those examples, and that's actually a good thing. At 7:30, this is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at traffic, and then the conversation continues.
All right, in Westlands right now, there's a bit of a hold-up right around the 87, then getting to the roundabout and heading into the city centre. Not as smooth as you'd like it to be. In and outbound on Ngong Road this morning, traffic. There's road construction going on. We know that Ngong Road is yet to be completed, but this affects traffic this morning. Of course, we see the combination between Riara Road, Kingara Road and Dagoretti Corner, that affecting traffic in and outbound this morning. On Thika Road, moving very, very slowly, but it's getting us to the Pangani underpass and then getting to Limuru Road, or then going towards the Globe Cinema roundabout. Not too much of an issue right now. Okay, jam all the way from the University roundabout to Museum, and this is inbound this morning. Limuru Road is smooth all the way from the Village Market, then heading into town. Not much of an issue there. Mombasa Road still moving slowly. We'll get there eventually. Jogo Road still giving up those vibes right around the City Stadium roundabout, getting into the CBD. We're in the middle of traffic hour, folks, so that means that you're going to be stuck for a while. Coming around about 8 o'clock, we'll see what it looks like, but be patient for now. Let us know what you see on Spice FM KE.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke. We are also live streaming on Spice FM KE Facebook. Join the live stream on Twitter at Spice FM KE and YouTube Spice FM KE, talking about diaspora remittances and the biggest source of foreign exchange earner for the country. Let's take a look at the examples from Africa.
Well, let me look at 2017 when Nigeria, the government, issued a debut diaspora bond, and what it was to be available to private bankers and wealth managers to separate sovereign wealth fund for the diaspora, to say that here are projects that we see to be bankable. Looking at the development agenda of the country, here are projects that we know would be bankable, that you would be able to seek, it's guaranteed that you would get returns on your investments. Okay, whether or not the country is able to handle them or not is not the issue. But here is an option where you can actually put your money. Again, coming from the fact that people have asked, all right, I want to invest back home. I don't know what is viable. I don't know what would give me maximum returns within a minimum period of time. So this was set up because they heard and they said, all right, let's do this. It was set up, and then so they took away the challenge of finding what these bankable projects were, and then they were able to actually say, you can unlock the diaspora and you can find these projects. They can be funded, but what we're going to do is make it conducive. We set up this commission to make it happen. So you know where to be able to go and look. South Africa did kind of the same thing, where South Africans living, of course, outside of South Africa were then able to have a diaspora commission set up by the government, where they said, okay, in this case, what we can do is we've understood that you're looking for somewhere to put your money.
Yeah.
There are certain areas within the economy of the government that would need an injection of capital, for example, and there would be a possibility for return of investment. So as a government, we're taking the initiative to set up this commission. You can come in, go through the process, find where you want to put your money, and we then be accountable
And set
to
up a
you.
mechanism for you to invest into
Absolutely.
those specific projects.
And then more importantly, we as the government be accountable to you
Yep.
in terms of giving out adequate reporting and letting you know how things are going, where the project has reached, and then your returns remittable, but then remitted to you. However, the project then within the country has stood and
Yep.
is bankable. So it's possible. You have examples of such being done.
And it's being done by big countries. Those are big economies in Africa.
I mean, if you want to look at the
Nigeria, South
numbers,
Africa.
you talked about 258 million shillings,
Yeah.
billion shillings coming in,
85.
285 billion.
Yeah.
Developing countries, as they call them, with the bulk being in Sub-Saharan Africa, I beg your pardon, $528 billion in 2018. And understanding that this money it was not just for education and home planning, that people were sending money back home, but there was extra pools of money that people really didn't know what to do
Yeah.
with. Really didn't know what to do
Kenyans
with
are looking
and didn't
for
know where they
avenues
could
and places
direct
to
this
invest.
fund.
When you talk about now these people who've been conned of in the greenhouse scam, right? Many of them you'll find are diaspora people.
Right.
They were wondering, so where can I put my money? And they heard, well, there's this thing where you can put in money, greenhouse, and you'll be earning this much from their relatives back home, and they
By the
invest
way,
money there.
something I must sort of like object to is the concept that they didn't know what to do with their money. They do know what to do with their money. It's more like, what else could they do with their money that could make
They're
them
looking
money?
for the opportunities
Yes.
to invest.
Yes.
So
Yes.
where can I invest? The growth of the real estate sector, and we've heard this from other quarters, the growth of the real estate sector in the last decade in Kenya has been fueled by the diaspora.
It has.
So Kenyans outside the country are sending money back home, buy a piece of land here, buy a house there. Many of the houses that have been developed, many of the developers have tapped into the diaspora market, and they'll tell you a lot of our houses have actually been bought by diaspora.
If you want to actually understand the magnitude of diaspora funding, if I may call it, you need to look at a country like India. All right? Now, the subcontinent of India has probably, next to China, the largest population of people on the planet. And they have people all over the world. When I say all over the world, I mean literally that all over the world. And it seems to be a culture that is spoken of anecdotally, but it's also true, that the one thing that they always do is they always send money back home. So if you simply look at their numbers and you consider that this is a culture that people have, many economies actually run by means that may not necessarily be part of some huge and complex development process, but something as basic as its citizenry, simply loving their country and wanting to make sure that their kith and kin are looked after. Nothing more complicated than that. And if one is talking about a success story that needs to be managed, in Kenya, this is it really. This is not something the government has engineered. It's not something even the government the government created it in this sense. We've had a very keen sense of ensuring that people get education. The education sector has opened up.
Yes.
And in the absence of the education sector opening up, the human resource that we have would not exist. Yes.
That's
so in
true.
that respect, the government has contributed significantly. Yes.
It has also contributed in ensuring that there are no job opportunities locally.
And that is a good incentive. That is an excellent incentive to move out of the country.
Yes. Because many people are moving out of the country.
No, but that's the incentive. I mean, wherever you want to look at it, we had Canada open up in the last 5 years and basically say, you know what, here we are open for business, everybody come. And the influx of people to Canada, not because they wanted to go see what the country was like, but because they were looking for better opportunities to have an extra dollar in their pocket. And then we see that these flows are increasing. But you mentioned something, Eric, and I think is extremely important. I think at the same time, it's when we talk about a structured approach, you would want to look at, things that dog the people of the country who are still domiciled here and say, these are some answers that people are looking at. One of the big things that we've continued to deal with is access to credit for people who are either starting a business or want to enter into some level of entrepreneurship. They are unable to get access to credit. Oftentimes, governments have to look outside and bring in partners who would then now create this fund base that people can then.
Yes.
And this is a unique opportunity for people in the diaspora with the kind of money that we are talking
That's
about.
a brilliant one. If you look at some of these financial institutions, some of the big banks like Equity and the others, they have entered into partnerships with some international organizations and say this is an SME support fund. So SMEs are able to tap into this money, and they borrow for their growth, well, at some sort of interest rate that has been negotiated with those lenders. Can you imagine if banks were being facilitated to come up with such kind of products and saying, so this is a diaspora, so diaspora come in, we tap into this pool, it's accessible to the financial sector. This is how we.
Why are you burdening our banking system with
City already doesn't like the banks.
with the creativity?
No. You see,
City already.
no.
City said the banks are making enough money.
Look,
Just leave them.
no,
alone.
it's not that. Look, all right. Let me explain why I'm asking you this question. The other day when we were looking at the property market, the thing that became apparent was there are more houses to sell than there are people to buy them.
Yeah.
Now, should such a situation not indicate to you that perhaps
People, sorry, City, not more than people to buy them, more than people with the ability or capacity to buy. Because people are many, but people who now have the might to buy is what is lacking.
And what did I say?
You said more houses
You
than
didn't
people are
qualify it.
available to buy.
I said there are more houses that are on the market because of the situation than there are people who can buy them. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yes, and that's what you are saying. Yes. Now, I'm saying this. That situation would lend itself to a very basic understanding, and that is you need to change the way you're doing business. Because if there are all these houses, you seem to have repossessed them, and they're sitting. Shouldn't you sit and discuss and say, folks, this doesn't seem to be working. What can you pay? Let's suspend this discussion we've had of what we agreed you should pay. Can we restructure this thing and find a way in which you can continue paying me? Meaning, at least some money comes in.
Eventually, I'll make my money.
Yes.
It's just that I'm
It's going to be much slower over a longer period of time. And probably if you're living in it, keep staying in it. But the punitive approach that they have guarantees you're not in your house.
and nobody's buying that.
And you're also
Trying to
not
auction.
paying. The only person who might benefit here are the lawyers, but the individual. Think of Safaricom, think of SACCOs, and think of their success. Their success has been on the foundation of the non-creativity of banks because they've come with creativity. They've offered money, same money, but they've said, we could do this, we could do this. And they're always innovating.
Create some slack on some of the issues where people have problems with getting access in the first place.
Because in the absence of access, you can't make profit with money. Because the bank's business is to sell money. Our relationship is we buy the money from them. That's the business we have. But they make buying difficult.
Banks have come up with diaspora products, but those products are, like a savings product, savings
That's what
account.
I'm trying to tell you.
can open an
What's
account.
creative
but
about it?
beyond that,
It's non-creativity. It's just calling it diaspora, but it's the same service they're offering here. Look,
coming up with something beyond that, maybe it requires, approval from higher up authorities, and that's why I was saying this is an initiative that should come from the government. Create that policy, that enabling environment, that thing that works
Eric,
for the financial sector, the banks, to be able to come up with these products.
But you know what needs
Eric,
to work?
if
The
the-
relationship between an economy and its citizens is vital in this case. When you maybe now this comes back to where CT started in the very beginning, that you can have the whole diaspora commission, you can have the bonds in place, but it is absolutely critical to have a relationship of trust between the government of the day and its
Accountability.
economics and the citizens, to be able to say that regardless. I mean, some of these people don't even think about it.
Do you remember
Where
the
is my
energy-
extra money going? It's going back home because there's already that relationship of trust between the economy and its citizens. And that is something that when we talk about getting ducks in a row, absolutely necessary for that to happen.
do you remember the amount of energy the banks spent on trying to get the interest rate cap removed?
Yep.
All right. When it was on, were they making
Concerted
profit?
effort.
Yes. When it was there, were they making profit?
Yes, they were.
Yes. Were they making huge profits?
Yes.
Yes. So they pushed, it was removed, they even made bigger profits. Now tell me, if they spent a fraction of that particular energy in actually trying to find ways of making sure that their customers are actually happy,
Yep.
what they do instead is start complaining about Safaricom. they are not being subjected to the same rules as us, and yet they're a financial institution.
And the mobile lenders.
They are not a communications company. Now, those are the signs of spoiled children who want to throw a tantrum every time someone comes into the ground in which they are playing. Why are they playing the same game as us and they're not wearing red shoes like the rest of us? Now, this is what you keep hearing. I am saying the role of the government is so crucial in some of these things in that it's not complicated. When banks make more money, so does the government.
Yep.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes.
I'm going to open up the phone lines 0719-012-600. Jump into this conversation. Is the government doing enough to tap into the huge potential of diaspora remittances? Is the government doing enough to tap into the huge potential of diaspora remittances? The diaspora is Kenya's number one foreign exchange earner, standing at 285 billion shillings in 2019. The second highest was tourism at 163 billion. That's more than 120 billion shillings less. Is the government doing enough to tap into this sector? It's 7:45. Good morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
Once again, that phone number to call 0719-012-600. Is the government doing enough to tap into the
Spice
huge
up your
potential
life.
of Kenya's diaspora?
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
285 billion shillings in 1 year for Kenyans abroad is a lot of money. And what we're saying this morning is that the government ought to do something and recognize that this is a huge sector and give it all the importance. Come up with products, come up with incentives, come up with policies that encourage Kenyans to invest more, send more money back home. 0719-012-600. Just to tease you and tell you, in the next hour, 8 to 9 a.m., we'll be joined by Bishop Dr. David Oginde, and we'll be talking about the separation of church and state. He's around. He'll be joining us shortly, so we can have that conversation. You were saying something before we went to the break, CT, and you wanted to jump in, and then
Please jump.
I jump? Right. So, I mean, I said it's very important that there's that relationship of trust then between the economy and its people. Because if you at some point, for people to be in the diaspora, we have to look at the element of disgruntledness that asked them to go, right? There were greener pastures, there were better opportunities, which obviously they did not get here. So there was already a deficit in trust in terms of what an economy can do for its people by the time they were making the decision to then leave. Over time, it is then important, if you want these people essentially to bring their money back, because let's be honest, with a diaspora fund or a diaspora commission, the country will benefit from this money, right? The individuals benefit as individuals collectively, they benefit, but the country benefits as well. Now, if you want to get into a symbiotic relationship as such, you want to make sure that your trust quotient is rather high.
Yeah.
So the way in which it took time to have that trust deficit, it will then take time to rebuild on that trust. But it is critical as a unit to have that in place for people to then be able to say, this thing that made me leave in the first place, I went to X country, then I was able to amass, this extra. You want me to put it back in the country, I need to be assured that this will actually take place. So that's why I'm saying this approach must be very well structured. It must be versed in thought. It has to be carried out in a way that people will make sure that it is you can make sure that it is transparent, it is accountable, and it is managed well. The kind of money you see is not a joke. It's not little money. It's big bucks that we're talking about here. So you need to make sure that people are comfortable with the country to the point whereby they say, in terms of my options, domiciling my money is the number one option. And I want to make more money for myself, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm investing in the future of my country. That's the thing. So it is very critical that be done at that point, that, you increase the trust quotient. Otherwise, such things would not work.
You know, one of the things that appeared in today's papers, if you look in the finance sector, something very interesting. 81 billion Kenya shillings was actually returned to the exchequer by government corporations that hadn't utilized them. That is what was reported by some.
Yeah.
Now, every year, this happens. Every single year without fail. Government departments, government corporations don't burn all the money that was allocated to them. Now, I am certain that the government has clear plans where to take this money and what to do with it. But ask yourself a simple question. If this discussion, if this subject of the diaspora that we engaged in were to take into consideration what else that particular money, not in terms of, forget the investments that we're talking about. Investments as far as government, if the government is directly involved, except when directing you as to what you could do with it, $2.8 billion every single year without fail. Remember, some of these countries that we know of, like Norway, you know, one of the things we know them for is something called a sovereign fund.
Yes.
What that means is it's a government saving for the people, meaning ni pesa ya wananchi.
It's a kitty for the rainy day, essentially.
Yes, for the country.
Yes.
For the country. Now, if the government came up and said, we want to set up a sovereign fund, and this is what we want to do with it. Do you know, and the taxes that you pay, a percentage of this will go towards this sovereign fund. Forget NSSF, forget NHIF, but a sovereign fund, so that our children and our children's children have something, and we ourselves have something to fall back on. What would resonate is that the government is actually looking after the interests of the people. Lofty ideas it may sound, and then say, these natural resources we keep talking of, let it benefit, yes, the people where we find the resource, let it benefit the government, but let's also have, again, this fund where, so the citizens of Kenya know our money goes here to look after our interest. It then becomes, it will not be difficult at all when you then tell people who are in the diaspora that, look, this money of yours, this is what they'd say. In fact, the others would ask you, those ideas that you have for using money, do you think you can find use for this money that we have?
Can you also?
That's what happens. Good money tends to follow money. It is very difficult to have a bright idea listened to if you are looking poor and you look like you are suffering greatly, sincerely, and you're talking to someone about how to make money. The immediate question you ask is, why aren't you making money for yourself?
Why aren't you making?
Have you ever seen any of these so-called witch doctors whom we see in the papers, well-dressed? Man, those guys are dressed in some tired-looking goat skins and some funny feathers that have seen...
That's a uniform.
Yeah, that have seen better days. Yes.
Have you met them on their off day?
I actually haven't met any witch doctor.
You wouldn't?
No, I honestly haven't met any.
It was a trick question. You have done well to evade that one.
You walked into that one nicely, CT.
That was going to land you right there. Whoa, okay.
All I'm saying is there are many, many things the government can do. It's not so much, I've moved from the money. When your citizens have confidence in you, these other things become very easy.
Yeah. It's easy to engage from that point.
It's very, very easy. It's very easy to suggest something. It's even easier for people to follow you and to sort of like cheer you on and join you. But on the other hand, if they don't trust you, even the best of schemes will go through the sort of scrutiny we're giving some of these things.
Yes.
The moment you mention the word government,
that's that thing.
The initial thought or reaction would be doubt, and they are not really sure. Or not even doubt.
Not
You would
doubt.
want to,
Extreme
not
doubt.
even touch it with a 10-foot
Extreme
pole.
doubt.
Our money is gone.
You wouldn't
Yes.
be interested in this, and that's what I was saying. That the time with which it took to have this trust decimated is probably going to take double the amount of time to have
And
people
effort.
thinking and
No.
effort to realize
I
that
think
this is
not so
actually
much,
something
though.
that we could go through.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. To understand that isn't the case, look at how we vote and the people we vote in every 5 years. We are always hoping. Kenyans are always hoping that this time around it'll work out.
It's going to be better.
There's no day. If we had gotten to a point where we had no hope, this would be a different country.
Yeah, but in this case, this is what you're hoping that somebody will come and take and lead you. But in this case, when we're talking about money that you have worked for, sweated for, People want to know that they can trust you. It's not even a matter of are you giving them hope. No. Right off the cuff.
If you're
can
out
I
there
trust
and-
this thing
and
that I
you're
have
being told,
sweated
invest
for?
in government, and then
you're
you're-
going to think twice.
you're
going
reading
to
the
ask,
papers
You're
and
going to
saying-
ask the same government to show me
Receipts.
one project where this thing has worked. Show me what you have invested in, or show me the viability of this particular project within which
You're
you're
the same
asking
people who
me
took
to
money
invest.
for Aurora and Kimore and it went.
Yes,
You're the same
yes.
people who took money for Eurobond and then we hear that you don't know how you spent that money. And then you're telling me to give you more
The
money.
one that I worked for, the
issue
one
of
that I
trust.
left this country in the first place to go and look for.
In
Then
fact,
you're asking me to give it to you like that.
Of interest,
Oh, no.
the
It's going to
Swiss,
take
the
some
Swiss
time.
ambassador reminded us of Chicken Gate.
Yes.
He didn't quite call it Chicken Gate. He called it Chicken Scam. He said, that chicken scam. You know,
Yes.
for a moment I was lost there. If you have a government whose reputation is based on schemes that have defrauded its citizenry, unfortunately, the trust quotient is at its very lowest.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's going to take time to build it up. And you're
No,
going to have
I'm telling you, it doesn't.
to,
No,
when
please.
people's money is concerned, CT.
It's low.
It doesn't. It
When
doesn't.
people's money that they've worked for is concerned.
No.
I can
It takes
assure you,
time.
It doesn't.
Some of those, like the infrastructure bonds and the Euro bonds, some Kenyans have invested in those. Kenyans have bought into those, and they
Yes.
know. So this is money that I'm lending the government. You're gonna pay me back, but I still have the trust
The doubt,
issue. I
the
still have
issue- the trust issue
but
is
I'm
there,
still
I'm
gonna
telling you.
invest.
Look,
The trust issue is there, and it is a deal.
people may not trust 100%, but this concept of a second chance is something Kenyans are always ready to give. Believe me, I look at the example of how we vote and the people we vote in. I look at the way people hope and say, okay, they've said this, let's try and see. Yes, the trust deficit is profound, yes. But on the other side of the pendulum, Kenyans are quick to look for something to hope in and to trust. And I'm saying,
Benefit of doubt is very easily
we
given.
give it. It's something that it's a currency that we trade in very easily. It's abused so often. Believe me, if you look at the number, the times that it has been abused, we ought to be one of those countries in the world where we trust absolutely nothing. But that's not the case. Kenyans are very trusting. They're very believing. Yes. How do you, Bishop, forgive me, I'm going to enter into your territory. How is it that we have all these interesting preachers who talk of heaven and do something completely opposite to heaven, and we see them on a daily basis in the media? Because of trust. You believe because they mention the name God that they actually represent God.
Let's take just one call from Lydia, who's calling in from Parklands. Lydia, good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM. Today, this is an important subject you're talking about. Now, our good President Kibaki and our Treasurer Uhuru Kenyatta, our Mudi Owori, that group gave us a small government. Then came the post-election violence government, and they gave us the biggest bloated government. And what I fail to understand is you pay VAT on your sales. And then why should you pay VAT on your business rent? So many businesses now can't cope. They just have to close down with this VAT on the business rent.
Yeah.
Why charge 2 VATs? I mean, you have to borrow from the bank to pay that rent. When the landlord would
It's
tell
a good
you,
one,
pay little
Lydia.
at a time.
Lydia, thank you
Yes.
very much. It's a good one because I got to go to the top of the hour. The issue of VAT and actually that one is another topic that we want to raise sometime in
It's
coming
really
days.
killing businesses.
Yes, and we'll
Thank you.
raise this one with the Kerry. Asante sana, Lydia. Have a good day.
Thank you. Same to you.
Right. Thank you very much. Of course, as we go into the top of the hour, in the next hour, like I told you, we'll be joined by Bishop Dr. David Oginde, who's joined us in the studio. He's here already. Good morning, Bishop.
Morning.
Asante sana for coming.
Thank you.
Dressed like a bishop, you see, in purple,
Yes,
in the
yes.
collar, just to remind us in case we forget.
Lest you forget.
Lest you forget, I'm a bishop.
No, lest we speak carelessly
Yes.
in the presence of a prelate.
Bishop, we welcome you into the show.
Even without
with what we
outside the
call
presence.
yes, we welcome you to the show with what we call today's proverb, and this is going to be given a reminder to us by C.T. Muga.
A person who eats alone cannot discuss the taste of food with others.
A person who eats alone cannot discuss the taste of food with others. Bishop, he'll tell us what that means. I'm seeing you looking at him like, This is a situation with Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, you can continue the conversation on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube. Also, you can watch us, www.spicefm.co.ke. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
It's a parking lot on Jogo Road from the Donholm roundabout. The snail seems to be much faster at this point. It's not moving. This needs to exercise some patience there this morning. Wayaki Way, there's a lot of traffic today, unexplained at the moment. Let's see what it looks like in a short while. The mess on Thika Road is quite terrible today. Getting on to past Allsops and then joining from Kiambu Road, joining from Muthaiga is snail pace this morning. I guess a snail is the animal we're going to use to describe everything that we see on the roads today. Gong Road as well is moving very slowly to the City Mortuary roundabout. Mombasa Road in and outbound today seems to have a bit of an issue, but you can't use the Eastern Bypass. The long way seems to be the way that works today. We'll see what it looks like. But Langata Road is A-OK. Joining from the Southern Bypass, you can get downtown or then to Ngong Road a lot quicker if you use that option. Spice FM KE, let's know what you see. We're trying to keep people moving this morning. You know, you have to exercise some patience in some parts of the city. If you find an alternative route or one that's not so jam-packed, do let us know. There is sharing and caring.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up.
8. Thank you very much for choosing Spice FM this and every morning. 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 Nakuru. Good morning in Eldoret, 96.7, Nyeri, 90.9, and Malindi, 97.7. We live stream the show on our digital platforms, www.spicefm.co.ke, Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, as well as Instagram. Of course, joining us this hour is Bishop Dr. David Oginde from the Christ is the Answer Ministries. Bishop, you've been in that church for quite a while now, you know, at the helm of CITAM. We call it CITAM. CITAM is the one in charge of various churches, especially in Nairobi, across Thika, there's one.
How many churches does CITAM? Yes, the family.
CITAM is actually a very small church. Maybe just loud so that
you're being
people
modest.
think we are just 28 congregations.
Only
that's modest.
Only 28.
Only 28
Yes.
churches.
Okay.
No, if you compare with the other churches like the Anglican Church with
Of course.
thousands
Yes.
of churches, I mean,
But
millions
Bishop,
of
the
members.
Anglican Church has existed from the time of creation.
It is true. Yeah, so we are a small church. We are 28 congregations, 24 of them locally and 4 outside the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Outside the country, which countries are those?
We have a church in the US, we have a church in Romania, we have a church in Namibia, and in East Timor.
And the headquarters is Kenya.
It's in Kenya, yes.
So this is one of those instances where you hear a Kenyan church being exported
To East Timor, no less.
East Timor and Romania.
Yeah.
right?
Look, you'll forgive me. Where exactly is
East
East
Timor.
I've heard of the country. I knew it had problems, but where is it exactly?
East
in
Timor is
Southeast
very
Asia.
close to neighboring Indonesia.
Indonesia, Southeast Asia is where you're
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that you'll get your direction.
You can
Where
you can
It's
see
a-
Indonesia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indonesia can see. It's a
Yeah.
big country.
Yes.
I can see it easily.
So East Timor is the opposite of Indonesia. It's a tiny dot.
When
Yeah.
did they get independence?
Very
Because
little.
They were not always East Timor. What were they before?
They were actually part of Indonesia.
Mm.
Yes. So then they got independence and became a country of its own, but a very small one. At that.
They separated.
Yes.
And of course, Romania is in Eastern Europe. CT, I was just...
You know that one at least.
Here, I'm being taken to task. Okay, I get it.
There you go.
Eastern Europe.
Uh-huh.
All right.
And East Asia.
On the.
And
Okay, I
East
get
Asia.
it, guys. I get it. I get
East
it.
Timor. Good. Bishop Karibu Sana, and thank you very much for joining us. Of course, you know we invited you because we'd like to talk about separation of church and state in Kenya. This is a matter that, despite it being discussed in the constitution and saying, all right, so is the church opposing this because it wants to be part of the constitution? It's a conversation that keeps rearing its head every now and then. First of all, the basic one. Do you believe that there is proper separation between church and state in Kenya?
First of all, let me say there are two issues. One is separation of church and state, and separation of religion and state. Sometimes people talk about separation of church and state when they mean separation of religion and state. There's a sense in which the two cannot be separated, because the state or government is about people, and religion is also about people. So if you are really to lead people aright, you must take into account all the holistic nature of their lives, which includes religion. So to bring this idea of separation of church and state, it becomes very difficult, and especially religion and state. The whole thing of separation of church and state came about from the US, where in England, in Britain, or Europe in general, where they came from, religion or Christianity was part and parcel of the state. So that the Queen of England, of Britain, for example, was also the head of the church. And so when they moved out and got into the US, they still embraced the whole thing of Christianity as the foundation of their nationhood. But as time went on, their drives, your beliefs, your values, your ethos, and what you are going to do in studio will actually come out at one point or another. Because you are not two different people. You are one person. So if you have certain values that you hold dear, as you keep talking to us, they will naturally manifest. And if somebody now says you cannot manifest those values in studio, you become a very frustrated person.
It becomes difficult to, remove myself from
Exactly.
that side of me.
And that is what in some nations, especially in the West, Europe and US, Europe in particular, more seriously than the US, they have tried to force people to live an artificial life. So that you come into your workspace and you're supposed to live your religion and all other values that guide your life outside, and come into this space and be like a robot, really. Do things in a neutral way. There is no such a thing as a neutral person. When I enter here, I come with my whole self. And everything I'm going to do and say will be guided by the things that I believe in and the things that guide my life. And so when you tell me to now leave that completely out, I become an artificial person. It's not the real me. So when we talk about, therefore, separation of church and state, The only place where that can happen is in terms of the guidelines and principles and practices and policies of a state as an organization. That you can do, but not the people that live and work and interact with the state.
Who should be speaking on behalf of the people when it comes to then matters of religion that you talk about, of morals, of the way in which life should be? Should it be the state, politicians, or should it be the church? Whose voice should ring through clear?
It depends on what it is. Because you see, even our own, if you look at our own country, in the preamble of our constitution, we say that we recognize the supremacy of God Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth. In my brief discussions and interactions with lawyers, they tell us that the preamble of a constitution is the most important part of a constitution because it is the foundation upon which everything else is built.
Yeah.
So if we have already declared in our constitution that we believe in God, how then can you go ahead and say we don't believe in God? We cannot speak about God. You cannot bring God into issues. So who should speak? Everybody should. Because if in this country we had politicians who recognize God as declared in our constitution and therefore can speak on behalf of God and for God in the same way as we have indicated, this country would be totally different.
We seem to have politicians who speak on God about issues to do with God when it suits a particular purpose.
Then that is not speaking for God.
It seems that it could be a Sunday service today, and because of things that happened the last couple of days, I then want to call on the people and say, you know what, this is not a godly way in which to do things. How can it be that we hear from these individuals who then will use it to their advantage at some point? How do we then separate the two? I'm hearing you say one thing because you're going to go back to the church as the bedrock of your moral belief. But then I see you doing something else. Shouldn't it be one voice all the time if that's the way we're going to go?
Exactly. That is the problem of separation of church and state. Because we have this false notion that you can separate things. So we have people who are living in dichotomy, where when you are in the religious space, you become very religious. You talk religious. You do things in a religious manner. You look a very pious person because you're in a religious space. When you go into a different space, then you are a totally different person. And people don't seem to even realize what they are doing. But it is this whole notion of that separation.
It's adapting to the circumstance.
It is not
So
adapting.
if I'm like when you walked in here, we said, all right, so now we're in the presence of a bishop. All right. So even our tone, if you notice, our tone is lower. If it was a politician in here, our tones would be higher.
That's why I told him that he should not just be good-mannered
In your presence.
in my presence, even when I'm absent.
You must be good-mannered all the time, CT.
All the time.
Especially, not just in your presence, especially when you can see me.
Especially when I can see.
Yes, if
now,
you can't see me, that's a different matter.
you see
But bringing
now,
back to that,
the problem is, we treat God the same way we treat man. Because I can only see you like now I'm seeing you.
Yes.
But God sees you everywhere. Whether you are in the darkest of the dark or in the lightest place, God is seeing you. If we had that ingrained in our minds, then whichever place you are in, if you're serious about living for God and working with God, then it doesn't matter whether bishop is there or not, whether pastor is there or not, or whether colleague, Christian friend is there or not, you will just do the right thing.
You see, the example that I gave about your presence there was because of the culture that we have in the country.
Yes.
You see, that's what it actually reflects. That even whether it is somebody in the highest office or whether it is the simplest of citizens, the idea of presenting an impression we perceive to be desirable is at the foremost in our minds. And it's what determines our behavior, not the need to do good or to do right.
And that's where, as a nation, we have totally failed, because our values are not ingrained.
No, they're not.
When I do leadership training, I talk about values on the wall and values in the heart.
Mm-hmm.
You go even to an organization like the Standard Group, and
Mission,
you find
vision, value.
yes, vision, values, and so on.
Yes.
And they are framed nicely, put in a very prominent place. These are our core values. And you can see integrity, excellence, etc., etc. But then you interact with the people working within that organization. You can't see excellence. You can't see integrity. You can't see all those things. So those are values on the wall. Those are not values in the heart. The values must be removed from the wall and put in the heart.
The people who are best at doing that are
Yes.
the clergy and the religious leaders, being the shepherds of the flock.
We are the best in bringing values to the heart?
Yes, in especially ensuring that values get into our heart and stay there, and we move with them wherever we are going.
Exactly.
Like job
Let's go
description.
into this short
Yes.
break, and then when we come out of that, we'll now look at the clergy and the flock, and the role that they play in ensuring that the values stay in our hearts, and when we don't have those values in our hearts, the failures of the clergy on that. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 17 minutes past 8 o'clock. We're going to take a short break and look at the weather, and then come back and continue the conversation with Bishop Dr. David Oginde. Good morning.
It's mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi today at 18 degrees, fog quite low, highs of 26, but it's going to remain like this for most of the day. In Nakuru at 17 degrees, partly cloudy conditions, rain is coming through at 28 degrees. The high is 18 degrees in Nyeri. Rain showers coming in with highs of 25. In Eldoret, 26 degrees will be the high with partly cloudy conditions through the day. 21 degrees is mostly sunny in Kisumu this morning, expected to end up in rain through the day and the rest of the evening with highs of 29 and lows of 21. In Malindi, a warm day at 29 degrees. Rain is coming through with highs of 32. 28 degrees in Mombasa, 32 degrees the high. Showers will be expected later. In Dar es Salaam at 28 degrees. Thunderstorms to follow through with highs of 32 and lows of 26. In Kampala, 21 degrees, and we see rain showers coming through later with highs of 26 and lows of 19. In Johannesburg at 16 degrees, it's mostly sunny conditions, highs of 26 and lows of 16. Rounding out in Lagos at 28 degrees, clear skies this morning. Rain to follow through with highs of 34 and lows of 27.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
This is the Situation Room with Kenya's biggest conversation in the room this morning.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
David Oginde from CITAM, that's the Christ is the Answer Ministries. And Bishop, before we went into the break, we were talking about, how we conduct ourselves in various places and various platforms. And you had even raised the issue of when somebody is in charge and they behave in a certain way, in a pious manner, and then they go into another political forum and they behave differently, and you agreed and you said, yes, this points to a problem that we have in a society. Does it also point to a problem that we have with the leadership of religious organizations?
Yes and no. Part of our heritage, if I talk specifically about the church, part of our heritage as a Christian community in Kenya and in Africa, because this was brought to us by missionaries, was that everything was integrated. You found schools were done by missionaries, by the church, hospitals, and almost all other necessities of life were actually around the Christian faith. Then we came to this place where we separated, which is our topic for today. So we separated these things. So you go to school and then you go to church. You go to hospital and you go to church. You go to government, you go to church. So many people found themselves therefore growing up in this separated kind of life, where church is the place you go to, especially on a Sunday or a Saturday if you're an SDA. And then the rest of the days you go and do your work. Then
So I hear
Sunday
you saying,
you go to church.
So I hear you saying that it must be holistic. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly.
Across board, whether we're talking about leadership, whether we're talking about education, wherever it is,
Everywhere.
it's got to be holistic.
Exactly.
But we still see
So that when you are here in the studio, if you are a Christian, you should actually be a Christian in the studio. Everything you do, everything you say, everything about your life should reflect that faith. So you do not wait on Sunday to be a Christian. And we should not judge you by the fact that you go to church or you don't go to church. It is, are you living a life that is Christian? If you look at the Bible and the way, if we go back to the whole issue of state, the way the government was organized around God. And there were three branches of government, not like the ones we have today. There was the king, there was the prophet, and there was the priest. Those were the three arms of government that ran government under God, with God at the center. All these three people were responsible to God. Paul talks about the king or the governors, he called them governors, which we would call in our time the politicians, as servants of God who are appointed by God, and calls on the believers to pray for them because they have this responsibility that God has given them to make sure that people live in a harmonious, peaceful environment. That is the responsibility that they have been given to bring governance, so that the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, is as much a servant of God as the Archbishop of the Anglican Church. And one is not a greater servant than the other. And they are both responsible to God. So that the president should be asking God, how should I govern the nation? What should I do in this situation? And the prophet's role was to bring the mind of God to the people, so that when God speaks and wants to communicate a message to the whether to the priests, to the people, or to the government leaders, it is the prophet who heard that voice and comes, and in the Bible you hear, "Thus says the Lord." You know, this is what God is saying, and whether you're the king, you had to submit to that which God is saying.
It sounds like you're looking at that and saying, listening to you this morning, you're basically trying to go and play the thin line here and say it's impossible for us to separate ourselves. It's impossible for us to separate church and state, or religion and state, because it's one and it involves people and it's one and the same person. But you see, this is where the danger lies, where we have a leader who is also being influenced by another religious leader. Let's say that a president has, for example, said that I listened to Prophet so-and-so, and Prophet so-and-so has come and is the one who's telling me, you know what, coronavirus is not going to affect us.
You see, God...
Because we see preachers saying that.
Yes. Now, God has given us something called wisdom. When you look at Solomon was a king. He was not a priest, he was not a prophet. Solomon was a king, but he was one of the wisest men that ever lived. He had insight into everything. So you cannot, as a king, whether that you are a king of a nation or a king of a company or a king of a home, you cannot abdicate your responsibility for personal thinking and wisdom in every situation. Yes, you'll get guidance. Even the prophets who come to you, you have to listen to them And the Bible gives you the responsibility to test every spirit. That is given to every person. So that even for me, if somebody comes today and say, Bishop Oginda, this is what the Lord is saying, I will listen to them. But I will also go back to the same God and say, God, is this really what you are saying? Yes. So you have to test that spirit. So I do not expect that the president, as a leader of a whole country, will hear the voice of a prophet and take it just like that, especially if it is giving you guidance that seems to be contrary to natural flow of things.
If we look at the way things happen here, I mean, a lot of times we see political leadership using the church as a platform to push a particular agenda or to send a particular message. We want to then ask the question, it is clear that they have that agenda and that's why they're using that platform at that point. Should it be allowed that that platform should be used? Should it be allowed? And it just seems that mixed messaging would come out.
I think when you say used, that should not be allowed, because then you are simply using the platform. But if you avail yourself, if for example, a politician comes into a church and they have a message that they would want to communicate to the people as a leader in the nation, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that if the leader in the church gives them that space. But if they are simply using that platform for personal agenda, for politicking and for campaigning, it is absolutely wrong.
We don't see anybody, though, up in arms to say you can't use these. We've seen an increase of such, whether it be at funerals, church services, wherever it is, using the platform. And we don't hear anybody saying, I mean, even from the church leadership, to say, actually, you know what, you can't use this platform for this agenda.
Actually, the church does.
Usually, we don't hear it loud enough.
Especially at funerals, they do. If you worked in the rural areas as long as I did, you would know that the political voice was not just stifled, it was given a specific space. And in many instances, the church would not allow them to go beyond that space. And there was a reminder that, this is a funeral, not a political rally. There are instances where if you're a politician, all you'd be allowed to do is wave, literally. Wave, sit down. But the point I'm making here is, remember, Ndu, our people love our politicians as much as they love the church.
More than.
Now, we will get on to what I wanted to ask. I'm going to backtrack this was sort of like laying ground for what I want to ask. Yes, in 2007, one of the things that was leveled against the church were two things. One, their lack of voice, as in their lack of loud enough opposition to what was going on. One. Secondly, they were blamed for being biased. They took sides. Meaning, we had a political dispute in a country and they took sides. Was this a fair accusation?
It is not fair. You see, first of all, you have to appreciate that a religious leader is also a Kenyan who has interests in the political, whatever is going on in the political arena. But at the same time, they are leaders who are supposed to give guidance. So it is true that there are individual church leaders and religious leaders, more than beyond church leaders, Muslims and others, who specified and spoke openly about their stand as far as political, whatever was going on politically at the time in terms of parties and so on and candidates. That, in my view, can only be considered unfortunate, because as a Christian leader, you cannot declare your position openly, because you lead a people who are very diverse in their following. In our church, for example, we have people from across the board. We have people who believe and will die for Uhuru Kenyatta. There are people who believe and will die for William Ruto. There are people who believe and will die for Raila Odinga. people who believe and will die for Musalia Mudavadi and Kalonzo Musyoka and all these people. So if as a leader then I stand on the platform that has been given to me by God and I say we should vote for so and so, immediately I bring confusion in the minds of these people. Because there is no way I can do that as a Christian leader who is leading a diverse group of people who are mandated to make decisions through their vote. Now, when it came, let me contrast that with the referendum of the Constitution. Referendum of the Constitution, we are dealing with the laws that will govern the country. We are dealing with the principles that will guide how we live in this nation. I took space on our platform to guide the people and to tell them, these are the things we believe in, these things are wrong, these are right, this you can vote for, this you cannot vote for. Because now we are talking about principles, not parties, not people. And you did hear some of us, if you are watching that time, yes. And I personally had no qualms at all using our church platform to say this no. To say we cannot vote for this constitution because A, B, C, and D. Because we are dealing with matters of principle. But when it comes to politics, like 2022 that is coming, there is no way I can stand on the platform and say, vote for so and so, or vote for party A and don't vote for party B. That is absolutely wrong.
You could look at parties' manifestos and what parties stand for and say, no, this goes against the principles that we stand for.
If I was living in Britain or America, I would do that.
Why?
And why not in Kenya?
Why not in Kenya? Because our politics is 100% ethnic. Manifestos are good documents that
just for document's sake.
Pieces of paper.
Yes, they are pieces of paper that nobody reads, nobody cares.
Nobody follows.
Most of them are
the
actually almost the same, copy paste. So we have not reached the place where our politics is based on principles, values, ideologies that you can stand for and say, this party stands for what we believe in. And let's vote for it.
When we come out of this short break, we'll ask you what the religious leader's role or church's role is in ensuring that you shepherd us towards the right direction. Yes, you're separating yourselves on stage, but as well as you said, it's completely impossible to completely separate ourselves. We'll play a clip from Bishop Wilfred Lai of Mombasa Jesus Celebration Center in Mombasa, who is talking about the BBI. Right after this break. It's 27 minutes to 9 o'clock. We'll take a look at traffic, and the conversation continues with Bishop Dr. David Oginde.
Utawala, it's a mess this morning on the Eastern Bypass. This just around the Eastern Bypass. It's an issue because road constructions are taking place, and this is affecting traffic. Anyone on this route right now is probably going to be in traffic for a couple of hours. Looking at other parts of the city, Lunga Lunga Road is moving despite the jam around there. Enterprise Road, Likoni Road. Everybody's going to spill over to Jogo Road today because the construction still is ongoing. Probably won't end for another 3 days or so. Kangunda Road, Outer Ring Road. Yes, we have a problem there as well. Coming off Thika Road, not so bad as it was about 30 minutes ago. Getting into the city centre, not as jam-packed as it was previously. Mombasa Road now moving a little bit smoother than coming out of General Motors. Ngong Road and Langata Road allows you to get to the City Mortuary roundabout, then coming off using Bagathi Way, or then getting towards Uhuru Highway, route right around the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, moving slowly wherever you look around the city, but you'll get there eventually. Some fog low in some parts of the city, so you want to keep cautious there. Spice FM KE, let's know what you see. We're trying to keep it moving this morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Go just across the border here into Tanzania. Tanzania does not need BBI. Ni ujamaa na undugu. They don't need BBI. And actually, Kenyans are united. We are only divided by our leaders. We don't fight one another until there is election. So the leaders should tell us what is wrong with them. Because they are the ones that make us fight. And they are the ones that need BBI. They need to build bridges among themselves. We are already together. We don't need any bridges. So they ask me, do you support the BBI? The information in that document I have read. And it is good.
That's coming out of
but the
a
agenda
leader here in this country, a church leader in this country, hearing that, as far as that's concerned, we're not together, clearly separated there. Who then is responsible for propelling the message, whatever it may be?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Here we have a message, a political message coming out very clearly.
Yes.
Who then should take the reins when it comes to this? Looking at something like the BBI, the church is involved.
Yes.
The church is involved in this as well. Mm-hmm. So who then should be responsible for spreading this message? Should it be the leaders with the contribution of the church? Who should stand out?
BBI, unlike, say, the previous constitutional process that we had that ended up in the Constitution 2010, is almost purely a political process. This is something that was put together to resolve a political stalemate. So it makes it very difficult for religious leaders to speak very emphatically about it like we did in the Constitution. Yes, because it's a political process. Sometimes you are not sure, like Lai says, what the agenda is behind it. So you could find yourself speaking very, very strongly in support of the BBI, only for it to, when it manifests, you find that what this thing you are backing was a totally different animal. You could speak against it, and then it turns out to be a very good thing, So it puts us as religious leaders in a kind of dilemma. And you will find, therefore, that the religious community, particularly the Christian community, has been relatively quiet about the BBI because it is not clear what the real agenda of BBI is. So you get the document, and like Bishop Lai says, you read through it, and it is also very good. Really, I've read through it personally. I find very little that I would say I am against because it is well written, good ideas, good things. But the question, if you remember that this is a political process, you then ask yourself, but what are they really saying? What is this really about? It puts you in a very difficult situation as a religious leader. That does not mean that then we run away or keep quiet about it. We then speak into the principles that are supposed to guide us as a nation, whether this is within the BBI or not. One of the things we have recognized or realized in the past several elections is that in every election year, we have a tension in the country that sometimes has ended up in us killing one another. The economy of this country comes to a standstill. Actually, the economists tell us that we lose at least 2 years in every 5 years. The year before election and the year after election are basically written out of an economic program. So we operate on 3 years out of 5 as a country. This is not a very good thing. I've been in nations where elections are going on. You
wouldn't know it.
You would not know it. You would not know it. You will not see any evidence that any political thing is going on. In Kenya, we are like chain smokers. You know, one cigarette lights another. Ours is one election lights the next election. So we finish and we start on another one. So this is what we need to speak into, and we have spoken into.
Are you speaking loud enough? And we look back at, like the clamor
right
for the
now
Constitution.
I'm on a whole national radio.
Loud enough by all religious leaders.
I think the point is well made, but when we say loud enough, it is you have a caucus of, say, bishops. You have a caucus of, say, Pentecostal churches.
Yes.
You have gatherings where, because of the union of many voices, whatever you say will be heard louder because you represent a bigger congregation. So the question is, this sort of messaging that you're speaking of, is it heard in that broad spectrum where the voices can be heard loudest?
And let's put it in context.
Yes.
In the clamor for multi-partyism, in the clamor for a new constitution, you remember those days. You'd have the Catholic bishops coming out strongly. You'd have the Protestant bishops coming out, religious leaders under NCCK coming out and speaking. You'd see religious leaders actually coming out and saying, look, this is the way we need to take, this is the direction we need to take. Of late, what we see is religious leaders, just taking a back seat, issuing a statement saying we are going to demand that you tell us where your contribution is coming from, and that's all.
Now, you see, that comparison has been made many times, but it is not a fair one. Because the circumstances under which we were living at that time, the only people who could speak were the religious leaders and the civil society.
Why do you say they were the only ones, Bishop?
They were the only ones because the context was such that people were afraid to speak.
Yep.
I didn't hear your voice. People were whispering even in their houses.
Yes.
So there had to be a people who have the courage and have the mandate from God to stand in that space and speak on behalf of the people. And that is what I was talking about, the prophetic voice, where you said, thus says the Lord. And prophets, if you read the Bible, were people who are not afraid to be beaten up. They were not afraid to be killed. And very few of us are in that space.
So, but if you look at the times that you speak of, and I do agree with you, the times we live in right now are even more perilous than those days. Because
not at all.
Oh, yes, they are.
Now we can sit here and talk these things.
And everybody can talk.
Everybody can talk.
But the circumstances under which the citizenry live is dire.
That is true. And that is where we are saying the reason that the voice seems not to be heard is because the things that we are saying are not the things that people want to hear. I think I said just made a comment. Somebody talked about Kenyans and politics. Kenyans have come to that place, unfortunately, where the politician has become their God. What a politician says is so much more important than what a pastor says. It's so much more important than what a journalist says.
Why do you think this is so, sir?
Why do you think this is so? Because politicians have socialized Kenyans to believe.
Where has our church been when the politicians have taken center stage?
To speak up alongside or even louder than this voice that would say, I'll give you a perfect example. A politician comes into a church and donates money, for example, for a fund drive that they're having. They're not necessarily looking at the funds drive, but they're looking at the fact that they're going to be able to go in here and their voice will be heard a lot louder because of what they have been able to do. And so it becomes that, yes, because the constant allowance of such becomes that's the voice that they hear. Whatever they're saying at this point sometimes doesn't really matter. But the things that they'll be able to do, the platforms on which they've been given now the preeminence to be able to do some of the things that they do, then we don't hear this voice that should be alongside, even louder than, in terms of how you should live, in terms of morality, in terms of how the country should be able to run. We see them using these platforms all the time.
Put on any TV station in this country at news time. What is the first news item?
Politics.
Yes, it's politics.
It's politics. It's politics.
With the voice of the politician.
So, if now I come back to the media, the media has made politicians to be our God. Pick any newspaper. The headlines are about politicians. So, even a young baby growing up seems to think that these are the most important people.
And
in fact, Kenyans, if there's no politics in the news, it's like today there was no news. Are we together?
It's true.
So a preacher like myself can be speaking as loud as we can, but we'll find ourselves in page 6, page 20. The other day, we called a press conference. Just a moment.
When the clergy speaks on these matters of national importance, they get the same prominence.
No.
When the Catholic bishops issued an edict on Harambees in church, they got maximum prominence. When Anglican Archbishop Ole Sapit did the same, he got the coverage. When you keep quiet, when you seem to be subdued on these matters of national importance, because the politicians are coming and telling us, you see, about BBI, apart from hearing now that clip of Wilfred Lai, why are we not hearing the voice of the church saying, look, this is what we want to say about BBI? We're just seeing the church going to the steering committee and that's it.
Just a few days ago, the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, which I lead as chair, called a press conference to speak on BBI. The media was there. We gave a position as to what we think about BBI, which is what I've just said this morning. Come news time, there was nothing. Only later on, there was a small something put somewhere. Why? Because on that same day, there was a politician saying what seemed to be more important.
So you didn't get the coverage?
They didn't get the coverage, but they were there. The media was there.
Are you saying that the media deliberately gives you a blackout?
It's not blackout. The media has priorities.
It's a prominence.
It is a prominence that is given to the politics. Because they know, that's why I'm saying that Kenyans have become so politicized that when there is no political news and you are in business, so I understand why you would want to give politicians prominence, because if you are not giving us politics, then I'll not be watching your station. I'll go to the next one where they can tell me about who said what and who is fighting with who, and so on. We love blood, in this country, especially political blood. So wherever it is spilling, that's where we want to go. So when a clergyman is coming to say peaceful things and trying to draw Kenyans back, that is not news. So unfortunately, Kenyans have got to that place where politics is the everything, all in all, and politicians love it. So that's why they go to a funeral service and they don't talk about the dead person. They don't talk about the family that is grieving. They talk about politics.
They talk about themselves.
About themselves. I was in a funeral service one time, and this young girl who had lost the father, it was the funeral of the father, and the politicians came and, as usual, took over. The girl woke up and picked the microphone and told them off. These were very senior politicians whose names I would not want to mention on the air. And she said, when my father was sick, none of you came here. My father worked with you and you and you when he was okay. He laid down his life for you and you and you. When he fell sick for several years. None of you visited him. None of you came to take him to hospital and so on and so forth. Now you come here to not even talk about him, but talk about yourselves. Please get out of this place and allow us to mourn my father. It was so beautiful.
Was
People
powerful,
clapped.
yes.
It was powerful. I've never seen anything like that. But the owners, in quote, of the function really need to take charge. When politicians come to our church, I take charge. I determine what they can do and what they cannot do, what they can say and what they will not say, where they will stand and where they will not stand. So in our church, we don't have a principle of not giving politicians a chance, but we give honor to whom honor is due. So that if the county governor comes to church, he's not a member of our church, and comes to worship with us on that particular day, we'll give him recognition because he's a leader of the county. I will say, congregation, today we are privileged to have so-and-so come to worship with us. If there's a time, I'll say, please come and greet the people briefly. But I'll stand next to him.
So to go and grab the mic.
So that if he's going on and saying things that are not relevant, I'll take the
Tap on
mic.
the shoulder is necessary.
Yes. If the president comes to our church, there is no way that as a church leader, I will say, just wave in the air. This is the president of the country. So we will run with the service as usual. And then at an appropriate time, I'll say, Your Excellency, if you could come and greet the congregation. And we'll give him an opportunity to greet the congregation.
So what if he gets into politics at that point?
I'll still stand by his side.
Okay.
Good.
This is my space.
It doesn't matter who it is.
This is my space.
Let's take a
I am
short
the
break.
president of
the church.
that
This
space.
is you're the head. Let's take another short break at 8 minutes to 9 o'clock. In the studio with us on the hot seat is Bishop Dr. David Oginde. We are talking about separation of church and state. And of course, that question that we keep asking ourselves, where is the church in matters of national importance and national politics? Have they been overtaken and overshadowed by politicians? Good morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
Sugar and spice and everything nice.
So before we go into this question, remember we played a clip of
Spice up your life.
Of JCC Mombasa.
Mature, intelligent talk
Here's a
every morning.
continuation of what you were saying.
Spice
Ian
up
is
yourself.
explaining his thoughts on the BBI and BBI process and telling the congregation which way to go.
People say what they don't mean and they mean what they don't say. If the document was what they are taking around this country, it would be a different story. But they are taking across this country the wrong thing. It's not what is written. They are telling us to read. But when we read, so what?
Well, you see, he's
You're not telling us
explaining
what
and
is
telling
written
and
there.
saying this is what I
People
think
are trying
about
to
this, and he's
create
talking
things
about
for
that
themselves.
in church. We
They
see
want us to
sometimes
go into a
politicians coming to the
referendum
same churches and of course playing their
so
own
that we
politics
can
of the
create
BBI,
some
and we see
positions
same
for
clergy
tribal people.
playing the same politics of BBI, and this is where it gets murky. Where is the stand of the church on certain issues? Where is the guidance of the church on certain issues? So if you feel that the politicians are taking over this process, why not just come out and call them out and say, look, you politicians, this is exactly what we think, instead of talking about them sort of on the side. You have the power and the position and the mandate to speak directly to them.
I don't know what you mean by on the side and directly, because I think Lai is talking directly. on this particular issue according to his understanding of that particular, of BBI. And when a pastor stands in a congregation and speaks to the congregation, when you think they are going this way, you could find they are actually going this other way. So it becomes very tricky. That's why I said we stand with principles in such situations. We say, this country, we have been fighting ourselves. Why have we been fighting ourselves? I agree totally with Lai in the first part you played, when he said Kenyans are united. It is politicians who divide us. It is absolutely true. When you come to work in this space, you have hundreds of people here from all over the country. You have no problem working together. If you have problems with individuals, not
A group.
where they
Not
come
their
from.
tribe.
Not with their community.
Not with their community. So Kenyans, you go to the streets where they are selling burgers. They sell burgers together, you know?
Yep.
And you find a Wanjiko and an Otieno selling burgers one next to another. When one person wants to go to a place, they say, please watch for me my wares, you know? And when a customer comes, they sell those wares on their behalf.
On their behalf.
Are we together? That's the ordinary Kenyan. We are together. But the politicians don't like a people who are together.
Together.
Yeah.
Bishop Oginde, should the church be the moral compass for the country?
Not should, is. It's our mandate. Yes.
How successful is this mandate?
This mandate is very successful in the sense that we speak into that space. Now, just like a preacher, I have people gathered every Sunday morning about in our main church, about 10,000 people. I speak what I believe should be told to them on that particular day, according to how I've read the Bible, according to how I've waited on God, and what I think God is saying. And I come and tell them, I have absolutely no control over who goes and takes what I have said seriously and puts it into practice. But my role is to declare. I cannot, if you come to our church, if you are a member of our church, I cannot follow you up to make sure that you do what we have said.
Why not?
Because I can't. I'm not your police, you know.
But actually you are.
No. My role is to tell you the right thing to do. Look at Jesus. Jesus never followed anybody. One time, actually, he was preaching, and the people thought he had said the wrong thing. The crowd went away, and his disciples were very disturbed. And when they saw that the crowd had walked away on Jesus, he turned to his 12 disciples and he asked them, do you also want to go? Because human beings have been given freedom of choice. And like somebody well put it, those choices have consequences. So mine is to show you the right way to follow. Yours is to make the decision to follow that way.
And when you see most of your congregation has not been following what you've been saying the past 4 weeks, don't you get concerned?
I tell them again. That's why I'm in business.
You repeat, you buttress the message.
I continue to tell them. And you see that they will
and you leave it at that. Aren't you going to deploy something and say, okay, wait, maybe I need to follow them around. Maybe I need to have...
How?
Instead of waiting for 7 days.
Let me answer him. Within the church, you have ministries, don't you? You have this particular branch of the church that takes care of orphans, takes care of widows.
It is
takes
true.
Care of the... Yes. Within those units, the follow-up that you're speaking of is possible.
It is not possible. Right now, assume you're my member.
You've said this 3 times.
I think you should.
Sunday's right around the corner.
Now, please, follow. This is now. I'll follow you up on this one. The way you're saying. Okay. How do I follow you into this studio today to make sure that everything you say on air today is according to the teachings I've given you?
Actually, follow up.
How do I follow you up in your house to make sure that the way you etc. There is no way now I can follow you up to make sure
Bishop,
on every space.
You had
pose. let's take a look at traffic. It's already 9 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic. And before we go into traffic, remind us, including the Bishop, of today's proverb.
Today's proverb is, a person who eats alone cannot discuss the taste of food with others.
Before the Bishop leaves, you're going to tell him what exactly you
I will
mean.
tell him exactly
so
what it means.
let's take a look at traffic, Bishop, and then we can hold you on for about 5 or 10 minutes as you finish that thought, and then we shall continue the show. Good morning. It's minutes past 9.
All right, things looking better generally. Around Bagathi Way, coming to the City Mortuary roundabout, a bit of a hold up, but that will be cleared up really quickly. That's now joining with everything coming off of Valley Road and coming then from Gong Road as well. That shouldn't be too bad. Utawala, we still have the problem. It seems that this has been because of two things. One, an accident, and two, road construction that is giving us problems this morning. Wayaki Way, still a bit crowded. We don't know the reason why, but it's expected right around now that traffic will get much easier to contend with. Nothing major that we see. If you do see it, please do let us know, Spice FM KE, so that we can know how to spread the word.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Clark. We have CT Muga, Induoko, and on the
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
About, the separation of church and state. And before we went to the break, we were having a bit of a heated conversation.
It was warming up. It wasn't actually heated.
Not yet.
You see, Bishop, you had an evangelical body.
Yes.
Now, you meet very often.
Yes.
Isn't it?
True.
Why don't you just meet once a year? Because you need to be able to not only discuss matters that pertain to the different churches or the organizations that are represented, but there is a greater calling to which you must adhere to. Meaning, among your members, you also want to make sure that you support each other. Mm-hmm. That's the follow-up I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Not going to live in someone's house. Mm-hmm. But again, whenever I ask questions, I'm leading to something. Mm-hmm. What I wanted to ask is this. You see, the politicians are actually members of this country. Members. When I say members, it's because they're also members of our congregation and our churches.
True.
So their utterances simply represent the state of the health of the nation. The real enemy of the church has been said to be secularism, or what they call the New Age movement. Mm-hmm. Is this a fair assessment?
That is true.
Why is it true?
It is true because human beings by nature, and if you are a student of the Bible, if you read the Bible, human tendency has always been away from God. A desire and a pursuit of self-rule. So that I want to be the God of my life. I want to do the things that I want to do. You will have noticed that one of the greatest movements today is on human rights. Our Constitution has a whole section on human rights.
Mm-hmm. Detailed.
Very detailed. Mm-hmm. And whereas this is also very good on the face of it, it is an anti-God spirit. It is an independence from God spirit. It is what the Bible calls the Antichrist spirit, because it sets God, man, as their own God. So you do what you want and nobody should ask you. I do what I want and nobody should ask me. So it sets us in that place where nobody else can tell me anything. And even governments are going to find it more and more difficult to rule. In this country, there was a time when the president has spoken, the president has spoken. Mm. That was it. Now we are in a situation where the president can speak and people can tell him off.
And we also speak.
We also speak.
Yes.
Yes. President can make a decision and overturn it.
It's disregarded.
It is disregarded.
Yes.
That is the spirit of the new age. That is the spirit that is now going to engulf the world until this world comes to a standstill. Yes. Because even at home, when I was growing up, my father's word was law. I mean, if he said it, he has said. There was no question. I don't remember once in my life ever asking my father why. Never.
Now?
Now my son, who
must
is
have
a
a
little
conversation.
boy, we must discuss. And the why question must be answered.
There must be consensus.
There's some though. I mean, and
Some.
just with this new age, a growing population,
Yes.
literally day by day, who don't believe in God whatsoever, counted as part of the population of Kenya, as per their rights within the boundaries of this country. How does this all encompass them? If we're talking about the church being the moral compass, the church then being involved, God being the center, if that's the premise upon which we set all of this,
Right.
how does this take then these into consideration?
My simple answer, first of all, is that there's no person who does not believe in God. Is it just which God? Just as I've said now, there are people who have got to that place where they are their own God. And so they don't want anything else. But they have a God, myself. So it is me, I, and myself. I do what I want, when I want, how I want, and no one asks me. Does that remove them from the jurisdiction of God, the true God? Not at all. Because just like if you have a children, a little baby declares independence in your house, does that remove them from being, stop them from being your children? No. It's just, they are just being foolish. Yeah. But where they sit, they think they are really independent. Mommy cannot tell me anything. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want. It only makes your life more difficult as a mother. It only makes you more angry with your child. It only makes the life of that child more difficult in your house, because they are living within the jurisdiction of your house, but they are declaring independence in that same house.
How do you live?
Life
how do you
becomes
deal with these
very
people?
difficult. That is what human beings, or some human beings, have done. They are declaring independence in God's world. I wish they could go into another universe which God did not create. Because if God decides to take their breath now, they will say nothing.
They'll be truly independent.
They will be truly independent. Thank you. I think we are getting to the same table. So it is really foolishness. It is really foolishness.
Does your
Bible actually says,
engage with such people?
The what?
Does your ministry engage with such people?
Yes, we do.
Those who go out saying, you know what, I don't believe there is anything
that
like
there
God.
is a God.
That is why we are in business, my friend, to try and help them to recognize that there's God. We do engage with them. We do engage with them because
But we are seeing an increasing number of these people.
They are.
You know, in every little community and every little society, you will find somebody who will tell you, you know what, this God thing of yours. And yet we have churches that are also growing and increasing.
What has happened is that we have a growing population of non-church going people. Now, imagine that here is a young person who is not going to church and therefore lives their life outside of church. This person gets married to another non-church going person. They live their lives outside of church. Then they get a child or children. How will these children ever get to know about church? Because I got to church simply because my parents took me to
Introduced
church.
you to.
Yeah. So what is going to happen is that as these generations increase, there is going to be a greater number of people, and this is what has happened in Europe. I met a 12-year-old with the parents. This was a family that was visiting a friend of mine, and she invited me to go and be with them. So in the village, you know, so we traveled all the way to the village and in this friend's home. So in the evening, she's now giving us a brief, it was a Saturday evening, on what is going to happen tomorrow. So she says we will wake up at this time, we'll have breakfast, and then after that we'll go to church, From church, we'll come back, we'll have lunch, and then I want to take you around to see around, da. And normal briefing, no big deal. When she's finished, this 12-year-old turns to the mother and says, "Mommy, what is church?" They were Canadians. You could see the faces turn red. These are 12-year-old who does not even know what the word church means. He knows that we are going to go there tomorrow. It's part of our program, but he doesn't know what it
actually is.
It is. So this couple gets very embarrassed and says, "No, don't worry about it. You know that we have never introduced our son to church. That's why." This boy was so curious, could hardly sleep, because he wanted to know what this church is.
We're going to church tomorrow. City, ask you the final question
Yes,
to Bishop.
During the discussions around our constitution, there was a matter of the Qadhi's court and the issues surrounding it within the constitution. And if I remember the voice of the church, it was loudly against it. Again, would you not say this is religious intolerance of the highest order?
Thank you very much. It depends on where you stand or sit while you say that. The topic of this day was separation of church and state. And I tried to correct it to say separation of religion and state. What that means is that there is freedom of religion in this country, and you are free to believe in trees as your God. That the Constitution allows you to do that. So people are free to worship in whichever way they want to, in whichever place they want to, and provided it doesn't contradict or the Constitution or break our values. But so what the government is supposed to do is to provide an enabling environment for each person to worship their God, for each person, or whether individually or in community, to practice their religion. That is the role of government, to provide that kind of a space. What we see with Qadhi's courts, and now it is not just Qadhi's courts, we see a situation where government has now brought a religious practice of a particular religion and put it as part of government to be paid for by taxpayers. That is what we were talking about. It is not religious intolerance. We have no problems with Muslims practicing their faith. This is a nation that is everybody's free. That has now gone on, perhaps you know, where it was in the news, in the papers, and public knowledge, that government is now paying madrasa teachers to teach madrasa. How do you do that in a multi-religious society? It is not practical, it is not right, it is not correct. And this we must say, even if you call it religious intolerance, because...
Yes, what if they offer the other religions the same sort of platform?
Like pay teachers for Sunday school, for example. Is that what you would be talking about?
That is where people would want us to go. But that is not role of government. Government is not supposed to pay Sunday school teachers to teach Sunday school. That is the role of the church.
The church.
That is the church to pay Sunday school teachers to ensure that, because this is a specific religion. Then you will go to the traditional cultural beliefs and pay their people to propagate their beliefs. There is no ending to this when you get into that space.
When you open that
it's
that
like
door.
a Pandora's box.
That's it.
Yeah. So what we were basically saying is, Qadhi's courts is dealing with matters of marriage between Muslims, two Muslim people. They arbitrate on disagreements and whatever may come out of a marriage situation and other personal matters. Why don't you allow these people to deal with that in their space? Church, my daily work when I'm away from Sunday, on a daily basis, I am dealing with those kinds of things.
Yeah.
People come to me, the
counseling
husband and wife, they are in trouble, they come, I arbitrate, I talk with them, I try to reconcile them, and most of them get reconciled. The government doesn't pay me for it. If they are they don't agree with the advice that I've given, and their disagreement goes beyond what the church can handle, then they go to a civil court, and it is dealt with there according to the law of the land. This is what we are saying. It has nothing to do with religious intolerance.
Bishop Dr. David Oginde, asante sana for joining us this morning. Thank you for coming in. 8 to 9:15. It's now 9:15. Asante sana. We'd like to invite you again so we can actually go into the depths of some of these conversations that we've had. It's an open invitation. Please take our call when we call next. Right.
I always take them.
Asante sana.
That's how I ended up here.
Asante sana. We wish you a good day.
Thank you.
Have a good one. And asante for joining us. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We've been talking to Bishop Dr. David Oginde of the Christ is the Answer Ministries, talking about the separation of church and state. This is one of the preeminent leaders. Thank you very much and have a good day, Your Grace.
Thank you.
Mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi. Showers
Classic
expected at
soul.
some parts during the day, experiencing highs of 26. In Nakuru at 19 degrees, showers coming through in the afternoon with highs of 27. In Nyeri at 19 degrees, rain through as well with highs of 24. It's partly cloudy conditions in Eldoret, highs of 26 today. In Kisumu at 24 degrees currently, rain coming through with highs of 29 degrees in Malindi. Thunderstorms with highs of 32 in the afternoon. In Mombasa, 30 degrees, rain to follow with then highs of 34 and lows of 27. In Dar es Salaam, rain coming through already, thunderstorms to follow with highs of 32 and lows of 25. And it's same thing in Kampala, rain through the day with highs of 25 and lows of 19. In Johannesburg, it's mostly sunny at 19 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 16. And finally in Lagos, thunderstorms right now with highs of highs of 34 and lows of 27.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
As well as Spice FM KE on Facebook. We live stream on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all those platforms at Spice FM KE. Follow us on Instagram as well at Spice FM KE at 20 minutes past 9 o'clock. Now let's talk about university education.
Let's talk about medical training institutions that offer university degrees in that same subjects in the country.
Mm-hmm.
The information we get from the body that is actually charged with ensuring that the standards that are required by these schools to ensure that not only they meet the threshold of a curriculum, but that they are adequately staffed to guarantee the sort of training and hence the output of the caliber of trained medical personnel in the country. Unfortunately, when this particular, should we say, the proof of the pudding was put to the task, 11 of our universities that actually offer these services were found to be wanting. Of the universities that offer medical training, 2 of them also offer dentistry training. That is Moi University and the University of Nairobi. But of the others, the issues range from 1, people heading departments that their qualifications don't actually qualify them for, departments existing with insufficient staff complement. Most students then are legally required or allowed by the institution. In short, the report that was given and the grading that was given was that all the 11 institutions that we speak of had something significant that fell short of the required mark. So the question that actually comes to the mind is whether it is indeed that all the people we have coming from these institutions who have been trained by the personnel are sufficiently trained to actually look after the health of the individuals in this country, because that is where everyone who is trained in our institution goes to. They are let loose in the public domain where they are required to provide services, whether under internship or in employment or in actual practice. And that's what they do. If indeed there is a problem, perhaps the biggest statement that one should make is the government ought not to have allowed so many institutions to teach these subjects if they are not prepared to provide sufficient personnel, sufficient equipment that is required for the training of the individuals, and also to perhaps limit the number of people who are allowed to take these courses. Because of significance, we also note that there are very many people who come, Kenyans who come from these institutions, who then cannot find jobs. And they cannot find jobs not because they are not needed. No, the services are needed, but the government cannot afford to pay them or to absorb them. So this is what I am saying. If we don't align our healthcare service to the training of healthcare providers, and we don't align this with the job opportunities that are possible, what we are in essence doing is we're not only endangering the lives of the people of this country, but we are guaranteeing that the healthcare quality in this country will continue plummeting.
But when I read that report, I asked myself, what led to that proliferation of colleges all over the country offering these courses? What was it? Was demand from who? If people are coming out and they're not getting employment opportunities, then demand from who? There's no demand from the market.
Yes, but you don't have to practice medicine in this country. If you have a medical degree, you can go outside this country and you will get a job. If you're a dentist and you can't get a job within government, you can leave this country and you will get a job outside this country.
So the issue of offering these courses should not really arise, and saying that thing of aligning our capacity to absorb them should not really arise, like you're saying.
Actually, it should, because there is a certain threshold that we must meet in terms of the ratio of patients that we should have, or we should align to the doctors that we have. Now, we have a deficit. The deficit actually occurred at a certain point in time. It began quite a while back. The first time that the Union of Doctors came into being, this was quite a while, well over 20 years ago. And the government clamped down on them. And at that point in time began a mass exodus of doctors, medical doctors from this country. It was around the time where now one of our MPs for a place called Seme, Dr. Nyikal, it's around the time when they were the people leading these unions, people like Kamarogo. Now, they were not asking for anything that isn't being asked now, by the way. Same thing. That union may have existed, but it could never put to practice what it was purposed for. Now, the long end of this story is this. We've always had a situation where this country has had a need for medical doctors. Case in point, we need teachers. We train teachers, but we can't absorb all of them.
Yes.
Our ratio of students to teachers is horrible. How do you explain a situation where a normal government class has 60 to 70 students, and then you have not 2 teachers, just one teacher?
Yeah. our capacity to absorb them, in terms of financial capacity to absorb them, is what's wanting for teachers, for doctors, for all these, for
Yes.
medics. But the need to train them still exists.
It does. But then comes a question that you asked rather, and the answer that is to follow. If you look back to the history of the proliferation of universities, again, it was demand driven. People wanting to get an education, and the country and the ministry responding to this demand. It was something actually very good. But again, the rate at which we actually produce the human resource that is adequate for this task. It's not that we don't produce human resource, we do. But the human resource doesn't stay within the country, number one. Number two, when there's a demand, the question I would have asked is, before you actually institute and guarantee that particular institution gets a charter, should you not have ensured that all the things that guarantee that charter are in place?
That's a given. That's the role of that body that gives the charter.
It's clear.
Right? To check boxes. Is this, do you have toilets? Yes.
But you as an institution also have to...
Would you not say that therein lies the gap?
That's the problem, because you as an institution as well need to make sure that these things you have in place before you're even presenting your papers for charter, right? There's certain things that you should have in place, and they make sure that, okay, this we've checked here. So by the time I'm giving it, you almost know that all these things are in place. Then you must ask the question that those who then award the charter, are they overlooking some things?
This points to something. It's
Yes.
far bigger. There's something wrong that happened, that went somewhere, because an institution is established. An institution says we're going to offer this program. An institution applies for a charter. An institution gets certified to offer that program. And all those things haven't been met. The institution itself hasn't done what it's supposed to do. The one that's supposed to check has not checked to ensure that it's happening. There must be pressure that's coming from elsewhere, which is why I was asking, what is it that led to the proliferation of these medical colleges or medical programs across the country?
I am saying it's very simple. It's demand. Remember, a university,
But demand,
whether it's a government
demand
university
is
or not,
fine.
yes.
But you see, what is it? Demand that also made the authorities to turn a blind eye.
Yes.
Why?
Okay, that's what I'm saying. I'm
Well,
saying,
let's pass as many as we can. This was the
Yes.
thing. Okay, to show that we are passing as many as we can. That's why I smiled when you said this, because essentially what you're doing then, you're passing as many as you can. You're not putting the checks and balances in place to actually make sure that any kind of quality is maintained, or at least established or instituted. And what you essentially end up doing is that that's what you said. You're letting loose a number of people into society who may not have been trained well with the proper facilities.
you know
very well that this is the case, but it's still okay. Because it's a numbers game now. You're trying to pass out as many as possible without realizing that there's a certain quality of authenticity that you must maintain.
But Eric,
And
bear
this is
in
a
mind
problem.
also, what often happens when you start, say, a new institution, it's understood that certain processes must take place and you're given time. Meaning, you are given a health check and you're told, you need to check this.
Build your capacity.
Yes, we
within
will
this
come
time.
back and find what you've done with A, B, C, D. The opportunity is given for you to improve. There are cases where you're so far gone, you're actually told, no, we're giving this length of time to transfer students, or we'll help you transfer, but we're shutting down this facility. That is how it goes. But because the growth of an institution in this manner, let me put it this way, has to be progressive. Remember, if you are going to teach medical students, you need a hospital. There has to be a hospital that they are attached to. You cannot practice medicine unless you practice it. You cannot understand the practice of it until you put your knowledge to practice.
To test.
And that's why any university that teaches medicine would be directly attached to a certain hospital. So it becomes a teaching hospital or a referral hospital. But remember also that you have a Senate that determines certain things. They pass the curriculum. Then you have these committees that determine all the other things that make sure that guarantees, or you have a council that the university runs. There are certain decisions that are made at that level. Now, if they agree and say, this is what we are going to do. Let me give you a case in point of something that I understood and I saw the program, say Maseno. Macedon didn't start by simply teaching medicine. No. You start by teaching something that is what you call, say, public health. It's a branch of medicine,
Yep.
but it doesn't require you to necessarily learn to conduct a surgery. There's something it doesn't require you to do. And you don't even need to have that knowledge in order to study it, because you're studying epidemiology, really. And then you progress. And you're given time within which to have had this in place. And
But during the time when you're offering that public health program, there are certain requirements that you still must meet.
And
For
usually
example,
you'll have met them. That is why you are allowed to do that, because you can be a university.
This report, CT, is showing that they haven't met many of those things. If at one point you're even talking about staff, heads of departments who are not suitable, who are not
qualified.
who are not
No,
qualified for the
there's something
positions
this
that they
report doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you whether at the time they were being given that particular charter, whether they had the staff or not. This report is telling you what they found.
What they found now.
When they did this. That's what it's telling you. If the report had gone into greater details and talked about, say, the movement of staff, because people move. If they had talked about this is what they had, but this is the makeshift situation they find themselves in, that the report has simply stated what they found. That is what we see there. But the other details that this report, I'm certain, has, which has not been documented.
You know what
in
it
the
points
papers.
to me? It points to me that you have one person who is head of department in 3 separate universities on paper. We had this, who was it that was telling us these things happen in government institutions where one person is, the same name is used in 3 different areas, in 3 different regions. This points to that kind of game having been played. 27 minutes to 10 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic and then the conversation continues.
All right, things seem to be A-OK now. Everybody seems to have gotten where they're going. We had a little bit still remnants of traffic on Mombasa Road, but it's okay now. Great to deliver that news that traffic is flowing as it should through the city and no problems whatsoever. If something does pop up, please be sure to let us know. 0719 012 600 Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Session on this hour, we're discussing the poor health of medical schools
Mornings
based
done
on
right.
findings contained in a report titled The Third Joint EAC Inspection of New and Existing Medical and Dental Schools. Inspection conducted in Kenya by the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council in March, between March 2nd and 6th, revealed gaps in the operations of the medical training schools, ranging from poor learning facilities, lack of funding to lecturers who miss classes, department heads with the wrong qualification. The list is there on the Standard newspaper, page 13.
Yes, the one I found peculiar was that there were certain things that the university offered, but there was no budget for it.
Okay. And it's there.
It's there. So you wonder, okay, how is it going to be taught?
How is this going to work here? I mean, you would want to apply some logic in this and say, really, we want to offer this, no budget for it.
And
but
then
it's
the
still
other peculiar
up for
one is
offer.
that you would find the university council had okayed maybe a certain curriculum, but the CUE had not accredited it, meaning they're actually not allowed to offer that particular degree. So you wonder, so how...
And these are the people that you say you're letting loose on society.
I use the term very deliberately.
Yeah, I knew, because you're letting them loose on society where people are in dire need of some of these medical services, and it would be that the graduates of these courses then would be the ones who are then the custodians of these services.
And they are not at fault.
And it's not their fault.
Because
somebody comes out with a lackluster...
Are they qualified to apply?
Somebody comes out with a lackluster qualification. Yeah. What are you going to do? They went through a system, they went through an institution, and that same institution then awarded them with the credentials to then go forth and practice, right? So who do you blame? The individual for not standing up at some point to say, you know what, actually, this is supposed to be happening and it is not. Some kind of accreditation we should have had and we don't. Whereas an institution then, which is mandated with these requirements, some of the things we should put in place, they're not putting in place. And then they still go ahead and graduate these fellows.
Imagine.
And then say, go forth. What are we doing?
The report even indicated there were some colleges that were within the university that was started, and the university just simply did not support it. So you're thinking, it has students, they pay fees, but for some reason, the money never trickles down. So you actually find that the department is poorly equipped, poorly manned, and students are still being taught. So you ask, what on earth are they being taught?
City, they're graduating. They're finishing. They're being awarded credentials. Go now.
Having
we're done
satisfied
with you. The requirements by the dean and the chancellor of this university.
Yep.
You may now go forth.
No, they're given power.
You're giving them the power to now read. Good heavens. Now we're talking about health, where somebody is sick, dead, dying, right? They need to, at some point, services be given to them to get well, to get better. Can you blame the individual?
No, you actually cannot. Because it is they used to argue that a student very rarely knows more than what they are taught.
Mm-hmm.
That is, of course, taking the view that the student doesn't read on their own. But the truth of the matter is you go to school so that you can be guided. And that's part of the teaching, is so that you are given knowledge and made to understand.
You go with an empty canvas.
Yes.
They put something on it.
Yes.
Then you live with that. That's the assumption.
That's a general idea.
Right.
Yes.
In this case,
you have a situation where you are being impeded from the get-go. And it's the institution. It's not you. You have institutions which are leaking. So at the very point of entry, you have a problem with everything that constitutes the university. You know, if they said it a leaking roof, that's not a problem. That can be fixed. But if you have a problem of finance, if you have a problem of equipment, but the two are not related. There are schools that don't have a problem with money, but still these departments are actually not properly financed. And as Eric put it, the moment you have a situation where you seem to have mismatched and misplaced, and it's heads of department, I fear to think, what about those who are just teaching and not heads of department? How sure are you that everybody who is teaching is qualified to teach what they're teaching?
Yeah.
You're not sure. Otherwise, it continues to bleed and bleed and bleed, and you have something that should have matured and it's stunted. You can't do it.
One of the things that you do when you shut them down, you incentivize someone to sort out the problem as quickly as possible.
As quickly as possible and as thoroughly as possible.
Because if you sort it out within 2 months,
we don't have to wait the year. Come and see.
The year is a maximum time you're given.
And for the sake of public confidence, just so that I know when I'm visiting a hospital, all the doctors that I'm going to meet there, all the medics that I'm going to are actually qualified. Recall those degrees. Recall those people that are graduated under these shoddy circumstances. Say now, come, we are not licensing you. You need to go back.
Do you know why I'm keeping quiet? Because
I know it's drastic.
No, it's not drastic. I think it's appropriate. I actually think it's appropriate. It's even
recommended.
Yes. You can even look back and say 3 years. Anyone who graduated within this period of time.
Yep.
Okay. I am looking at how it would be done. Hence my silence in terms
the
of
practicality
of it is because these people are already working. They're in the system. How do you get them out? That's what was making me keep quiet and pause.
Yeah. Ensure that they're going through now a reprogram. Sort of extra teaching, extra coaching.
It's something that you can actually do even as you work, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Because remember this concept of in-servicing, where during certain periods of time...
And it's part of the training.
Yes. And even if you look at adult learning as we currently know it, most of it takes place in the evening or on Saturdays, isn't it? When you're free. So it's finding a way in which this can be done. But the bottleneck that was worrying me was the cost.
The cost of it.
Well, no, who's going to foot the bill?
The university.
Which doesn't have money.
That's their problem. That's their problem. Let them find money. That's their problem.
They had money to do it properly, they didn't.
They didn't do it
for the
properly,
6
so now
years.
they should pay.
I paid for the 6 years. Shauri yako bana. I'm coming back for another year. You find the money. As you're coming to the end of the show, C.T. Muga, now let's talk about today's proverb.
Today's proverb is, a man who eats alone cannot discuss the taste of food with others. I think if you listen to this saying, don't you think it's actually self-explanatory?
It is, but broaden the context.
It's this way. If you look at our country, this particular saying would fit in best with public participation. When everyone knows the same or has gotten to understand and hear and then understand the same message, you can then believe, well, you can take the view that the discourse they will have will be aligned in a certain direction. But if this message is heard by individuals in separate places, you're not quite sure what it is they've heard, so you're not quite sure what they will think their action points are and what they need to do. Brought to the level of an individual, if you have a lone ranger attitude towards life, guaranteed is that you will have difficulties, bringing others to discuss matters with you, and you'll have other difficulties in getting others to also bring you into discussions that they have begun.
One of our listeners online, Sir Charles, Bing Charlie on Twitter, says, applies to the overpaid politicians in Kenya who keep pontificating about economic growth to a famished Wanjiku. A person who eats alone cannot discuss the taste of food with others. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock.
Cruising through the golden years on 94.4 Spice FM.